panel?
We don't have that function in this part of Ring Central, so.
So it looks like we are ready for both of our chairs to convene their respective commissions to this meeting.
Okay, I can kickstart it. And good evening, everyone. It is 7:04 on Thursday, December the 2nd, and we are hereby, we have quorum for the Complete Streets Commission. And we can go ahead and kickstart at least the Complete Streets portion of this joint meeting with the Planning Commission.
We need to start with, so I'm also confirming that we have a quorum for planning. And do we start with public comments on items not on the agenda? And
We
the
do,
consent
yeah.
calendar. Okay, consent calendar. All right. So are there any public comments for items that are not on the agenda today?
I don't see anybody has spoken up, Chair Budner.
No hand is raised.
All right, so then on our consent calendar, we have our Planning Commission minutes from the meeting of October 7th, 2021. If there are any comments or changes to them from any of our planning commissioners, please speak up. Otherwise, why don't we put forward well, is there a motion to approve them?
I'll move.
Okay. Second. All right, all in favor? Or actually, John, you have to go around.
Oh,
I
man.
do. So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Chair Bodnar,
Yep, yes.
Commissioner Ahi,
Yes.
Commissioner Menzinger. I saw her a second ago. I'll come back to Commissioner Menzinger, Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
and Commissioner Steinle.
Yes.
And one more time for Commissioner Menzinger. Yes. May have lost Commissioner Menzinger.
Oh, she's
Okay.
on the call, John.
Oh, she's on.
She may be muted.
Could be muted.
No, I've tried. I asked to unmute her. So it shows that she's here.
Okay.
She shows is still muted.
Right, but I asked to unmute her, so.
I think we can consider her absent for this vote.
Okay. Thank you. All right,
Okay,
the motion passes
does
6-0.
Complete Streets have any items on their consent calendar?
No, we do not. Thank you.
All right, so we have 2 items for public hearing. I presume, John, you want us to proceed in the order they are on the agenda, which is 440 first, followed by 355 first.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, so should we start with the staff presentation then?
Yes, for 440 first, the Steve Golden, our senior planner, will be doing the presentation on that project.
Good evening, commissioners. This, of course, is so if everybody can turn off their mic if you're not talking. Thank you. So sorry, this is going to be a joint session with the Complete Streets Commission and Planning Commission for the project at 440 First Street. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and like in the past, I'm going to stop my video because I have a lot of bandwidth problems with that. And can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is a development proposal that includes a design review and subdivision tentative map applications for a new 4-unit multiple family residential development on an approximately 5,500 square foot site at 440 First Street. The project site is located on the southwest side of First Street at the intersection of Lyle Street and is zoned commercial downtown multiple family, or CDR3. This site currently has about a 2,000 square foot, one-story commercial building that was most recently used as a veterinary clinic. And the current site obtains access from First Street, from a driveway abutting the southern parcel boundary line, and a sidewalk that's located along the entire frontage along First Street. Just as the commissions are aware, there's been a lot of development and pending projects in the downtown and along the South San Antonio corridor. This project is number 8 on this map, and this does show a lot of those projects, kind of illustrative examples of those projects that, again, are either have been constructed, under construction, or somewhere in the entitlement process. So there is a pretty high number of those along First Street. Just to give a quick background of where we're at with this particular project, it did come to the Planning Commission on July 18th of 2019. Of course, tonight we are doing a joint meeting with the Complete Streets Commission and Planning Commission meeting. And based on your recommendation, it would move forward to the City Council. This project is considered a SB 330 project. Since the application was submitted after January 1st of 2020. And so therefore we're limited to a total of 5 public meetings once the application was submitted. So per council direction, that's the main reason why we're doing these joint meetings, is to compress the number of meetings before the council can deliberate on it. So we don't necessarily limit the council's deliberations with the limited number of meetings that is required by state law. So some commissioners might recall at that July 2019 study session, the proposed project at that time was a 7-unit condominium building, and it was proposed as a 4-story building. With a common roof deck area at the 4th floor and 1 level of underground parking that provided 12 parking spaces. The underground parking garage at that time was to gain access through a shared ramp with the building at 450 First Street, which is directly left on the slide. And that project was moving forward under a separate application and entitlement process. At that July 2019 meeting, overall, the commission did express support for the project and the design. They thought that the design package was well presented, and there was maybe some commissioners that accepted and liked the exterior design detailing, but other commissioners did express some need to refine the exterior detailing. There was some common elements that the commissioners expressed, which was they had some concerns with sort of the commonality of where this building, the design elements of this building and how that sat next to the existing building to the right at 396 First Street and the building that was approved at 450 on the left-hand side. And there was some expressed desire to kind of understand how this building would interact, especially with the windows and balcony of that 396 First Street project to the right. And then how the upper story rooftop area was going to be used and the arrangement of parking in the underground garage. The application has changed quite a bit since then. The applicant revised the building, which is now a 3-story building with 4 condominium units, so down from 7. There's 2 3-bedroom units and kind of a 2-level configuration, and then 2 2-bedroom units that are 1 level each. The roof deck area has been made into private air, kind of private open space areas. And they do include a covered, unenclosed covered area that also functions to support the photovoltaic system, which provides alternative energy for the building. There's still the underground parking level, which is proposed, which has 9 parking spaces and a bike parking room, which accommodates 4 bicycles. You'll note that the common driveway shared with the building on 451st Street has been eliminated, and a new driveway is proposed to abut the northern property line, kind of furthest away from the shared parcel line with 451st Street to the left. The building height has also been reduced from 46 feet down to 35 feet to conform with the maximum building height per the R110 zoning district. There is an elevator overrun that's approximately 4 feet above the rooftop, and also a stairwell that's approximately 8.5 feet above the rooftop, whereas a 12-foot height exception is allowed per the zoning code. And then also, since the number of units was reduced down to 4 units, there is no code requirement for income restricted units, and so none are proposed. But with that, the project is not eligible for any development incentives or waivers per the density bonus law. So this project is coming in more like a conforming project, meeting all the development standards in the zoning district. I am going to try to describe the project, not in all detail, but enough. And again, because this is a joint meeting, I'm trying to include some of the transportation related issues and some of the design elements. So in no way I'm going to cover every single thing in this presentation. And the applicant is here as well to discuss some of the more detailed design issues. But I just kind of want to let you know that I'm happy to answer any questions after this, but that's the intent of my presentation. So moving on, the building does conform to the front and rear 10-foot setbacks, and then they're proposing a 0-foot setback along the side property lines. The applicant is proposing, and this is the site plan at the street level, or more like a floor plan kind of at the street level. And the applicant is proposing a small lobby entrance at the entry, and then towards the front of the building, there's a gym area that will look out to the street. The dashed red line shown in that ramp area is where the applicant is proposed to install the garage door, which I highlighted here because there was a pretty substantial discussion last night at the Complete Streets Commission meeting. So I just wanted to make you aware that they did, on this particular project, they are proposing to recess that garage door, which would allow for a greater space for queuing of vehicles into the garage while they wait for the door to roll up. This is kind of a blow up of the First Street frontage area. And it includes landscaping and amenities such as Class 2 bicycle parking. There's a water feature that will help screen the staging area that's used for the trash containers on pickup days. And then since this lot is only about 55 feet wide, it's fairly constrained on space once you include the ingress egress requirements of the driveway to the underground ramp, to the underground garage on the right hand side of this slide, the utilities and other requirements serving the building. It's just one of those constraints of this particular project, given the frontage area that they have and what's needed for all of those building requirements. And on the last side, you'll see there is a one street tree here. It's deliberately a smaller size tree not only because of the constrained space, but the fire department is, they are restricting the height of the trees. They don't want the trees to be more than about 20 or 25 feet tall because they might potentially block the required ladder access from the fire trucks. So they have provided city staff with some requirements with regards to the trees, particularly along this area of First Street, just because, well, because these sites are also fairly constrained with where those fire ladder access trucks can get access to the building, and so that's what they have communicated to city staff as far as street trees along here. And then with regards to, there was some other comment in the staff report with regards to fire department finding some other deficiencies in the plans. We have worked with the applicant through that process, and we have gotten tentative agreement from the fire department that all those other sort of technical issues have been resolved at this time. Also in this cross section, you can see the ramp down into the lower level parking garage, as well as a photovoltaic system that's mounted on the rooftop. And just to make the commission aware, and as provided in the agenda report, height exceptions are allowed for mechanical equipment required to operate and maintain the building. And particularly for photovoltaic panels, it does allow up to a 12-foot height exception. And this particular PV system is mounted on those structures on the rooftop, and those are proposed to be installed at 11 feet 3 inches above the roof deck. Moving on into the underground parking garage. The parking garage does have 9 parking spaces, which conforms to the zoning code. There's no reduction in the number of required or provided parking spaces, again, because they're not taking benefit from the density bonus laws as we've seen in other projects. Again, the garage is going to be directly accessed from that driveway on First Street. They are proposing that all 8 parking spaces for the residents will have EV charging capability. And then there's 1 additional spot which would be considered for guest parking, which is not proposed to have EV charging. The applicant's consultant did evaluate the on-site circulation in the garage, and they found that while there's not an abundance of space in that small garage, there's enough space for maneuvering vehicles inside that small parking area, and it provides adequate turning space. There is a bike room at this level. It should accommodate 4 Class 1 bike parking spaces, so that's about one bicycle per unit. There is a trash room, which will store the trash receptacles, and then they'll be brought up to street level at that staging area in the front yard area outside of the public right of way. Some other sort of more transportation related issues. This is somewhat a complex slide, but you'll notice here that across First Street, the project at 425, which is on the opposing corner, they were required to move the crosswalk from its existing area on the south side of the intersection. They were required to move it to the north side of the intersection. So that's going to conflict with the proposed driveway of this project. So now this project will be conditioned to move it back to the south side of the intersection. And with that, they are gonna, they're proposing a bump out of the sort of the sidewalk area, and it'll kind of mimic what the project at 425, that corner it should mimic that design element on that opposite side of the street. So I just wanted to bring that to the commission's attention, that they will be required to make those improvements to the crosswalk on First Street. With regards to other pedestrian and multimodal access, we did take a look at the maps that the Complete Streets Commission completed recently, which were the suggested walk and roll maps for each school. And there was suggestions by the commission with regards to improvements that could be made for the particular schools that this project would be served by, which is Bullis Elementary, Egan Junior High, and Los Altos High School. There's no improvements suggested along the routes except for crosswalk improvements that are directly in front of the school sites. Also, as it relates to transportation, the applicant's consultant did look at VMT, and they used the Santa Clara County VMT evaluation tool to evaluate and screen the proposed project. And they determined that using 2020 as the baseline year, that this project would comply with the city's interim VMT standards. They also took a look at the proposed project's trip generation estimates from using the ITE standards, and based on the change in use. Again, we're going from that commercial building, which was most recently used as a veterinary clinic, to this residential 4-unit project. It's a less intense use, so it's actually a reduction in total trips, daily trips, and also the peak hour trips. Jumping back to the architectural design, I'm probably not going to dig into this too much. I'll leave that for the applicant and their architect. But the form of the building did change quite a bit from what you saw in the pre-submittal process. But the building does use a variety of elements to break up the bulk of the structure, including building articulation, the balconies, and a mix of different types of exterior materials. The private balconies on the upper stories signal the habitation of those units, and it also allows the step back and the mass of the building. And just to kind of highlight, as discussed in the agenda report, we did have a peer review architect or architectural peer review being completed on this project. And the report did include recommendations to improve the design as they saw it. And the applicant chose not to make the changes. They felt that the modifications that they proposed, what they were trying to do was not propose a building that really fit a Mediterranean form, which I think the architectural peer review was kind of pushing for, but they were trying to really bridge between the more Mediterranean style building of 396 and the more, I guess, call it formal or contemporary style of the building at 450. And they're kind of trying to tie in those differences in their design. And that's what they heard from the Planning Commission, or what they thought that they heard from the Planning Commission at the study session in 2019. At the rear of the building, there is a 6-foot high wall proposed at the rear. They are providing some decorative element to break up sort of that monotonous wall along the back. This parcel does have a strip of land that's owned by the county in between Foothill Expressway and this parcel, so they don't really control that. There is one tree along that. I believe it's a Monterey pine tree which will be preserved as part of the construction of this project. We are asking the applicant to collaborate and coordinate with the county to try to deal with some of the stormwater runoff, the natural runoff off of Foothill Expressway. There were some issues at the 396 building that we would like to mitigate before it's constructed. And the 450 project was successful in, I believe, putting in like a vegetated swale. So that's the direction with the condition of approval that we're proposing to be adopted with this project as well. And they did take a look at the intersection or between the two buildings on either side. There was some concern about how this building attaches or doesn't attach, the gap in between the buildings, and they're proposing to essentially install a flashing material between the buildings. They have discussed that with the HOA, the residents at 396 First Street to the right. And they have been talking, and I believe there's some agreement with the building under construction at 450 on the left. There was some also included in the floor plans was the showing how this building interacts with the 396 project, which again was a little bit of concern with regards to the windows along that building. You will note, or will note to you that the slimmer windows towards the middle portion and rear of the 396 building, which you can see in the photograph to the left, bottom left, those windows are actually spandrel glass windows, so they are kind of a faux window. There's glazing, but there's actually a wall behind that, so they don't look outward. They just give the appearance of a window, so that wall plane is not so flat. But the window with the three elements, kind of the windows set back a little bit, that is an operable window. Of course, the balcony is there as well. So that closest window, I have measured on the screen, it might be hard to read, it's 6.5 feet from the proposed face or side of the building that's proposed. And then the balcony is located approximately 10 feet away from the proposed building. And again, the applicant is here to discuss more of the design elements of the building. They do have some models to show, which will give you a better perspective of how those buildings interact. So with that, in conclusion, staff is recommending that the Complete Streets Commission adopts a motion recommending approval of the project to the Planning Commission and the City Council. And staff is also recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a motion recommending approval of the project to the City Council. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you would like the applicant to provide their presentation, and we can take questions kind of together after that, entirely up to you.
Before we jump into questions, we forgot to do ex parte contact. So if we could use this opportunity to have any of the commissioners on either commission indicate any ex parte communications they may have had about this project before today, that would be good to get on the record.
Anyone on Planning Commission have ex parte communication?
On the Complete Streets Commission? Okay, I see how it's shaking. I take it as a no. All right, that answers the question. So I suppose that the next thing is the Complete Streets Commission, but I'm going to suggest that the applicant has a chance to add any further insight or color before we can come up with our questions.
Does anyone on planning have a question for staff? I don't see anyone raising their hand. I've got a question for staff. So can you explain a little bit about the how staff and applicants work with Canon Design Group? So like at what point, I'm looking at the date of their report for this, it says May. And so I'm wondering, and then the most recent design is dated September. So what is like the process for when we send it out for peer review? Then does staff have a conversation among themselves about whether they agree with it, and do they communicate that to the applicant? Like, what is the level? What is the intention?
Yeah. So
to accomplish?
So I think what the expectation is that the architectural peer review is kind of an independent review that's done. It's Canon Design Group, and so when we get a plan set that we feel has met all of the code requirements and it's a complete set of plans, we give that for that architectural peer review. Again, it's pretty independent, and there's a lot of subjective elements in there, and that was one of those things that was requested by the Downtown Buildings Committee, and there isn't a whole, to be just really straightforward, there isn't a whole lot of interaction between staff and that architect. It's a rather independent review, and that's the way that we kind of program that. So it's just another independent perspective. So then we give that back to the applicant and just kind of allow them to make any changes that they think could be incorporated into the design. It's not mandatory to address all those comments, but it just gives another perspective, an outside perspective on the design, since design has a lot of subjective elements to it.
Okay, so it's not like staff says we think these comments in particular, because I imagine that, I mean, the way I see it is the Canon Design Group is supposed to be experts on our downtown design guidelines. So to the as opposed to just giving subjective opinions of their views, I think. I mean, but if applicants then don't take it, and then it feels like a big expense for very little gain. But I'm trying to understand, like, and maybe the applicant can illuminate like how they review it and whether and if they've thought about incorporating any of the suggestions. I'll leave it that to them. Okay, any other questions from planning commissioners for staff at this stage? Okay. It's hard for me to see everyone, so if you do, unmute yourself and just speak. Otherwise, I think we'll move on to the applicant.
Yeah, and then Chair Bardner, this is Guido. Just because we're having a joint meeting, we did give the applicants 15 minutes just to give them more time. So just so you're aware. Sure. So Steve, is your applicant ready?
They should be. So the applicant, Abby Bergan, and he has his architects here as well, Ben Anderson and Chris Hall. So I believe Abby just turned on his video, so I'll mute myself. And
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Abby Borgan. I'm the applicant for 441st Street. I just want to start with thanking the staff for all their help in getting us to where we are today, and as well as thanking the commissioners for their time reviewing the application and the plans tonight. I just wanted to give some additional background to how we've gotten to where we are tonight. It's been a long haul. It's been about a 3-year journey to getting to this point. And I just have a couple of quick slides to share before turning the presentation over to Chris Hall of Platform Architects to do a deeper dive into the design. So if I can share my screen here, if you don't mind, to
Yes, you can. Go ahead, Abby.
can everyone see?
Yes, yes, we can.
So, so we're basically at the third major iteration of this building design. Back in late 2018, we submitted a 3-story, 4-unit design with 9 parking spaces, sort of similar to what's in front of you tonight. At the time, the planning staff recommended that we offer higher density, and the way to do that was that we needed actually more parking spaces. The suggestion was that we would share a driveway with 450, with the adjacent project at 450 next door. They were also under sort of a permitting process. They were a few months ahead of us. So we went back and redesigned, we agreed. We went back and redesigned the project, negotiated an easement, access easement to the lower level, our lower level, and came back with a 7-unit design that was a 4-story building, had 7 units and 1 BMR. And we actually went through a design review process on July 18 of 2019, and it was viewed favorably, and Steve touched upon it a bit. So at that time, the adjacent building 450 was getting ready to go before the council, so we waited to do a planning commission hearing until the building next door cleared the council. So they had 2 meetings, one at January 2020 and another one at February of 2020. The council sort of caught us all by surprise. They were not supportive of the shared driveway. In both of those meetings, they basically would not support the shared driveway. So that was a bit of a blow, because we had already spent another year redesigning this thing. So we had to go back to square one yet again. And finally, by August 2020, we came back with a revised and refined version of the original design, which now you have in front of you. The other thing I just wanted to quickly touch upon is that due to the small size of the lot and the narrow width of the lot being only 54 feet wide in front, this has been an extremely challenging project. We're really only limited to 9 underground parking spaces, as you saw. We're also limited to the amount of windows we can have on the exterior walls, which that in turn limits the number of bedrooms and the number of units we can have, even if parking was not an issue. The other thing has been really meeting all the fire department requirements. Their requirements seem to have actually increased over the last couple of years. And because of that, we've had to actually obtain an easement from the adjacent buildings to have fire department access to the rear of the building. And on top of all that, there's also as you saw, a pedestrian crosswalk that lands in front of our lot. So those, I just wanted to touch upon those, and with those, I'm going to basically stop now and hand over the presentation to Chris Hall, and then later on we can take questions, of course.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you all. And thanks, Steve, for that detailed presentation. I'm going to give a short, I guess we probably have five or maybe 7, 8 minutes left, short presentation. I'm going to try to highlight some of the design decisions, not overlap too much with what Steve's already shown you. Just as a matter of note, we were the design architects on 450 as well, so we kind of went through the First Street corridor process then, and were educated by all the various commissions, and are happy to be entrusted with this small adjacent piece as well. So I'm gonna talk about our approach to the sort of First Street streetscape and get into our choices for the architectural character, and I can address the question about the Canon Design Group review as well. We have some 3D shots that were integrated into the downtown Los Altos model that you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with, that I'm going to show. And then I'm going to get into some of the architectural inspirational precedent images and the materials and color choices. I do have plans and sections. We won't have much time to go into that, but I think we have it to answer any questions about the interior organization. And then we're going to touch on the Foothill Expressway frontage as well. So as Abby indicated, the big challenge with this site is that it's kind of a narrow site. It's hemmed in between two larger buildings that are about 3 times the width. It is very much a lot of activity on First Street and this evolving sort of streetscape, this building wall that's happening that provides this kind of backdrop to the pedestrian and is addressed in the design guidelines. I mean, we're very much focused on trying to fit that rhythm of the buildings on either side, and this kind of in and out of the massing for the balconies and the projected areas, the bays that project forward. And so you can see that kind of attenuation happening horizontally and then also vertically, and I'll kind of get into that in more detail. I'm going to flip to zoom in here a little bit, but these are shots from the downtown model. And then this kind of shot up in the upper left shows a little bit more of that 3-dimensional in and out. I apologize, we don't have any landscape information in this model. It's purely the building, so you'll have to sort of imagine the landscape in front of it. But as you can see, we're 3 stories and kind of step down slightly from both adjacent buildings. And then as Steve was describing, we have a roof deck area with some stairs that go up and a solar array at the top. This shot to the lower right is shown down Lyell. So this building on the right is, I believe, coming out of the ground currently. And you can see that there's this an effort, at least we feel, to fit into the context of how the language of the buildings is really evolving. So in our mind, it's a fabric of buildings that doesn't want to look like one style, but it also wants to kind of harmonize with that. So with that, I'm going to actually skip forward a couple slides. I'm going to come back to this Foothill side, but just sort of try to talk about the architectural language and the character that we're working with. And I'm sorry, here we go. Yeah, it's a little choppy, but I do think that we're looking to be in this Mediterranean language, and I know that this was addressed in the Canon design report. I think that we want to what we're calling sort of a crisp, somewhat modern interpretation of it, but it's the same color palette. It's these kind of stucco walls with these clean punched openings in very organized fashion. These highlights of kind of metal window colors and the elements like the awning, the balconies as such. So this is, if this helps, this is sort of a palette of inspirational other buildings that we were looking at. So you can see some of the same shapes that were used in our building. And then the landscape, which also conveys the character of a project, is very much sort of an interesting modern courtyard landscape. It's very urban, but Steve mentioned a water feature that's at the front of it that screens a trash area. This gives you the kind of color palette that we're using, and it's very similar to the 450 color palette. We've got a light stucco for the wall and some warmer colors as highlights. and then metal really being the primary accent material being used. This shows you some of the details that we designed, integrated into the primary facade. So as you can kind of see in more 3D how these materials are applied to the front facade. The balconies, we have both like sort of a lightweight balcony above the above the third floor. We really seek to change the material palette a little bit to lighten up, which is also a similar thing happening on the 450 project, where the penthouse level changes in material and steps back. One of the challenges related to this narrow site and all the openings that had to happen on the ground floor, both for the ramp and the lobby, is you create this kind of large amount of transparency that has to carry the upper level stories that really read as kind of a block. So we did try to develop a structural system in this metal that like was up to the task to carry the architecture above. And then I think now I would like to go back, just go through some of the renderings again to reinforce that I do want to show the foothill side, and the 3D map model of the downtown. It does have some elements that aren't exactly the site condition, but this is and I'll get into what that is. This is a view from the foothill side. The grade is actually about 3 feet higher on the foothill side, so grade will actually be at the base of this wall, as you saw, I think, in the rear elevation that Steve showed. So this does convey, how the cars driving by will see the facades. It's just the landscape in front of the walls. We'll have to use our imagination a little bit, and I apologize for that.
Chris, this is Guido. You have about 2 minutes left. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, let's. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit here and move on to some of the elevations. As you can see here, you can really see the height relationship between us and the two adjacent buildings. The solar, I'll just point out, that was designed really for optimum solar exposure. I think we considered other options for that as well, but that really led to the configuration of the solar. You can see that there is some relief to more vertical buildings on either side between our penthouse element that sticks above. And yeah, here the true grade relationship of the rear is shown. And then Steve did a good job of explaining the issues here. I mean, I think especially on the south side towards 450, there literally is a wall that matches pretty closely this profile. And on as far as the side facing 396, I mean, we've done what we can to address that gap and come up with an aesthetically pleasing way of how that will appear from both front and back by recessing some flashing sort of inset from the main facade plane on either side. And yes. I do want to briefly show, and I know it's about over, but I just wanted to briefly show a landscape plan that Abby provided, and I can zoom in on this, that articulates a little bit more the green space. I mean, we are constrained, as was mentioned, by these curb cuts and a need to access the building, but there still is a fair amount of planting that's very thoughtfully designed for the space that we have. Here is that water feature that would screen the staging area for the trash. And then also the gym kind of provides a little bit of public presence on First Street. So I guess that wraps it up.
Okay, well, hey, thank you. I take it from Guido. This is our cue to get into the next set of questions. So to the complete
And
commission.
just if I could just interrupt real quick. Chris did mention a couple times this quote unquote model, and I forgot to mention, and I fumbled with it so much to try to get it to work as well. We do have, the Planning Commission is aware, we do have a downtown SketchUp model, and I can show it on my screen if there's questions about some of that aspect. I know we've shown it to the Planning Commission before. I hope my computer will technically be able to do this over Ring Central, but I fumbled around with it quite a bit. So, but if you have some desire to see that some more, I can.
Yeah, Steve, can you please show us, if you've shown it to the Planning Commission, it would be great for the Complete Streets Commission to also see it.
Sure. If you have some questions first, or if you wanted to see.
No, just let's see the model, and then hopefully that would either put away some questions or perhaps inspire more questions.
Okay. So I'm sharing my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And I apologize because I didn't have a whole lot of time to work with this one because I was having a lot of technical problems and myself. So here is the building along kind of a view from in front of 396 First Street. And as the commission the Planning Commission is aware, we can put the perspective kind of in any location, that we want and take a view of the model. It's not, it should be seen as more of kind of a bulk and mass situation. Although it looks photorealistic, it's not. I also would disclose to you that in looking at this model, I did notice that the city's model with regards to, we built the rather kind of boxy elements of like 396 and other buildings, and in doing some preliminary measurements, I think that those setbacks are not realistic. The building at 396 actually seems to be pushed forward more than what it is. So take that with a grain of salt as well. But I can put the, I can kind of move around the screen at different perspectives if there's any particular position that you want me to point the camera in.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Steve. All right, so I'll take it as a cue then that we're going to get the Complete Streets Commission to jump into their questions. If anyone wants to start, please raise your hands. Or I don't see all the commissioners, so just jump in and state your name.
So this is Steve Katz. I'll start. I just have a couple of quick questions that I'd like to understand a little better. One is, given the tightness and narrowness of the property and the entry that you've got for cars to get into the parking area, how do you treat garbage pickup in the building for both recycling and trash? How does that work? And then my second question is, what is the impact on street parking as opposed to what it is right now? So if I'm correct, I believe there's a hardware store that's directly across the street from that site. Is that correct? And I know that people do park across the street on First Street. Are we losing one or two parking places because of the access into the garage?
This is Steve Golden with the city. So with regards to the second question, I don't believe there's going to be any loss of parking due to this project because you already have a driveway accessing this property. So it's kind of a one-for-one exchange. The the driveway is going to be moving to the northern side of the property where it exists right now, kind of on the southern side. There will be some red curbing involved, which may or may not exist today. And then given the crosswalk that is going to occur on the south side of Lyell on First Street, it just, I don't think there's going to be much change to street parking as compared to today. There might be one space because of red curbing of the driveway and where flares are and that sort of thing based on today's standard versus whenever that building was constructed years ago. With regards to the second question, I'll just share my screen once again, or sorry, your first question. Here is directly in front of the building and just behind that water feature, you can see there's 5 kind of squares there. For probably this size of a building, because you only have 4 units, you may not typically have like one of the combined larger containers, that get picked up by the trucks. The Mission Trail, the applicant will work with Mission Trail on how to serve this property, but given that there's only 4 units, then it's likely they'll just have the typical, more like the single family receptacles, the 60 gallon or whatever the size are for the units there. So I think that there's sufficient area for staging. Again, this is just bringing up the receptacles during trash day. We've heard from the commissions and the council that they don't want it to be in the public right of way. So there is an area outside of the street and sidewalk for those receptacles. We don't expect, yard waste. It's just not gonna occur in this property like you would have on a single family house. So that'll be minimized as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Stacy, I think I saw your hand.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. I just have 3 questions. Number 1 is about the parking garage access. Steve, if you know, can you just confirm the feet distance from the curb to the actual garage opening? I know you said that there's space for a vehicle queuing, but I'd be curious to just know the figure. And then the second part of my question for the garage access is the driveway proposed is 18 feet. That's kind of narrow for 2-way traffic. Does the applicant view this as a 2-way traffic, and are measurements like putting mirrors and things so the vehicles coming in and the vehicles going out can kind of see if someone's going to be entering the ramp before they do? And if that's not planned, would that help, and could it be added? That's my first question, and then I have a second one.
With regards to the distances, I was just trying to do in my head. So I think we were talking last night to the face of the curb, like what that distance is, and then also from the sidewalk. So the building itself has about a 12-foot, where the ramp is, has about a 12-foot setback to, we can call it sort of the back of sidewalk. Sorry, I have a smoke alarm going off my house. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. False alarm. Sorry about that. Okay, so where was that? So the building is set back about 12 feet from the face of, or not from the face of the curb, but from from the back of the sidewalk. And then the sidewalk here is about 5.5 feet wide, plus the curb. So that's another 6 inches. So it would be about 18 feet to the face of the curb. But, like we saw last night in the projects, with the setback of the building and where the sidewalk is situated, to the face of the building, you just don't have the depth for the vehicle to clear the sidewalk. However, this one, they are proposing to inset the garage door quite a bit. I don't have a measurement, but it appears to me, I would estimate it to be about 14 feet or so inset into the building. So with that, you would have a vehicle that would clear the sidewalk area.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So just to summarize, it sounds like 18 feet plus an estimated 14 feet from curb to the garage entry. And then the second part of that question was about the actual pathway down to the garage itself. With an 18 feet width, is it envisioned as, and this question can be for you or the applicant, is it envisioned as two-way traffic? And given that 18 feet is kind of narrow for two-way traffic, are you planning to put mirrors so the vehicles coming in and the vehicles going out can see if there's another car about to enter the ramp, so they accommodate for that? And if you're not planning to, would that be helpful, and could we do it?
Again, this is Steve. So I would just kind of direct you to the applicant's consultant, TJKM. They did look at the vehicle ingress and egress they added turning templates to the garage. They did show how a vehicle would maneuver into the garage. There's a part where a vehicle would kind of put, like, because of the turning radius, they have to go into, if you want to call it, the opposing lane, so that they can then straighten out into, sort of the right-hand lane. But it is planned to be a two-way access, given that there's 4 units and the number of vehicle conflicts into this garage is pretty minimal. But if you want to look at sort of the technical turning radiuses and that sort of thing, attachment B, the TJKM report, shows that. And then the applicant can address the issue about whether they're willing to install the convex mirrors and that sort of thing.
Yes, if Chair, if this is the time for the applicant to answer that question.
Yes, go ahead, please. Yes.
Hi, this is Abby Borgon. Yeah, we're again, 18 feet is somewhat narrow, but it is considered adequate for two-way traffic at that sort of a low speed. And we only have 9 parking spaces, so I don't envision a high frequency of two-way traffic occurring at the same time. But the other thing I should mention is the lower part of the ramp is relatively visible and open to the rest of the parking space. So there's quite a bit of visibility for someone, like, let's say, leaving the parking space, to have visibility to about 50% of the ramp at least. So they'll be able to see if there's a car coming down. And again, generally, I'm not opposed to having mirrors if that helps, but I can't quite envision where I would put it at this point. But I do agree to implementing that if the need arises.
Okay, thank you. We just see some other projects where that gets recommended, so I think it's worth looking into to see if that could aid vehicles going in and out, full visibility on the ramp.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The second set of questions I wanted to ask, and I'm happy to yield this to a fellow commissioner if anyone else was planning to ask it, was really about bicycle parking. So I know Suzanne.
All right, you got another question, Stacy, and then we'll pass it on.
Okay, I'm happy to ask it. I just want to give anyone else an opportunity. So my other question around bicycle parking is, we always have this challenge between what the VTA guidelines say, and then that's kind of what the requirement becomes, and that's what we can get. But as a commission, we often ask projects to provide additional bike parking to meet the needs of the residents. So I think we would ask you to give a good thought to, are you providing enough?
Let's keep it to questions.
Okay, so that's a question. Are you providing what the residents need for Class 1 bicycle parking? And then the other question is, are you looking at providing EV charging setup in the bike room? And that's the end of my questions tonight. Thank you.
This is Abby Borgon again. As we've alluded to, it's been a sort of a challenging, we're sort of space challenged with this project. Yeah, so 4 Class 1 parking spaces doesn't seem to be, adequate. In an ideal world, we would have more. We probably would have like 3 or 4 per unit. There are 2 outside and 4 Class 1 inside. There are, however, I can't quite share. I don't want to share the parking garage plan view, but there are quite a bit of spaces between, like storage spaces between some of the parking spaces, which I can sort of envision in the future being used for storage, and that could accommodate bikes as well. And for example, thanks, Steve. As you can see, there's these triangular spaces. This is really not the latest version of this, but it's close enough. There are some spaces in that corner, the lower left corner, between those parking spaces that can be used for additional storage. And those could be dedicated storage for the residents, and they can use it to park bicycles there if they wanted to. So that's one possibility. And to your question about electricity for charging bicycles, I had not thought about that, but I'm a total believer of electrification for vehicles. So yeah, I will go ahead and add that to that room.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Great, thank you, Stacy. Other commissioners from the Complete Streets Commission who would like to pose questions? State your name if I cannot see you on the screen.
Suzanne Ambiel, Complete Streets. Quick question on access for bicycles. I'm presuming there's an elevator and the elevator is large enough to accommodate 2 individuals and 2 bikes at the same time?
You are correct. That elevator is actually a gurney compliant elevator, even though the building doesn't really require it, but it's quite a large, relatively speaking, large enough elevator for 2 people with 2 bikes. Or they can use the car ramp to get out. But yeah, either way, it's possible.
And what is the percent grade of the car ramp?
It is the beginning and the end of the ramp are 10%, and the middle 10 feet or so is at 20%, I believe.
Oh.
Or is it?
So that's not navigable by a cyclist.
Even walking a bike? I mean, you would be walking the bike, not really riding it up the ramp.
You would slip.
Oh, slick. Right.
You would slip. And in the upper levels of the units, the elevator, what is the surface treatment of the hallways?
I'm sorry, could you?
So let me put some context on my question. If I'm a cyclist and all 4 spots are taken in the garage, I will park my bike in my unit. I need to put it in the elevator and take it to my unit upstairs. And I will need to walk my bike to my unit, are there hallways or do you step out of the elevator right to the door of your unit?
No, there are common, there's a common hallway at each floor outside the elevator. I'm not quite sure actually at this point what the surface material would be, but it would either be tile or possibly carpeting, but most likely tile, I would imagine.
I would hope you would anticipate that it's likely residents would be storing their bikes in their units and to prepare that surface area in anticipation. Those are all my questions.
Sure, yeah, I agree.
Tom, any questions?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Right, I have a few questions to the applicant and potentially to the city staff. So let me understand that gym that you mentioned, that is for the exclusive use of the residents, right? This is not meant to be rented out or perhaps serve as a commercial entity of any kind.
No, that is correct. It's quite a small room, and it's sort of the only amenity we have to offer in this building. Yeah, so that's just for the residents only.
Great, thank you. The second clarification is, if I understand the map properly, the entrance of the garage faces directly onto Lyle Street. Is that correct?
It may not face it 100%, but yeah, it does face Lyell. At least 90% of it probably lines up with Lyell.
Maybe that's a question really to the city staff rather than the applicant. Should we expect that traffic is going to go from Lyle, cross First Street into the driveway, into the entrance?
Yeah, so the ramp is kind of in the same configuration as the existing driveway, just on the opposite side. So as it is right now, people, if they're driving in that kind of southwesterly direction on, from Lyle Street and cross over to First into the commercial building, it would be the same thing. However, the proposed use is a less intense use than what the commercial building is right now. That being said, I know, and I can't really speak to my colleagues in the engineering division, but I think the city is looking, and I can't say for sure if it's a definite go, but I think we're looking at making this an all-way stop, which would resolve some of that, those conflicts as well.
Thank you. I think you took the next part of that question. Great. And then the last question is back to deliveries, and specifically I'm thinking about mail, or perhaps Amazon and mail. I'm presuming that there's a set of mailboxes in the lobby of the building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so when the mail delivery happens and the mail vehicle comes in, they would park outside of the building, and then they would walk into the building and deliver the mail, right? That's sort of is the logic.
We have an opportunity to actually provide mail delivery from outside the building. Actually, if you can see the little space to the right of the lobby entrance, it says mail. So that's right up against an exterior wall, the exterior wall. So that could have mail slots for delivery. But if larger packages are being delivered, the mail person will have a key that could get into the building and deliver those boxes.
So is it anticipated that the curb would be yellow, or is it going to be just all-time parking? Or is it going to be just only yellow for loading, unloading, and deliveries?
I can't really speak to that. That's more of an engineering question.
Yeah. I guess the question really is to the city staff. I apologize.
Yeah.
I guess I can take a quick stab at that and just say that there is definitely an opportunity for looking at what we would refer to as curb management all along First Street. And I think there would be that opportunity when we take a look at First Street in its entirety and do a streetscape planning effort. It's really something that, you know, we can't ask any single applicant to really look at that, because it's really more of a city or the entire street that, you know, we need to look at what is the best use of the street for parking, for deliveries, other, you know, curb management situations. Do we want to restrict parking or restrict hours of parking? And I think unfortunately that will come a little bit later with that streetscape plan that's not underway yet, but has been identified.
Great, thank you very much. And I think that will be all from the Complete Streets Commission.
Nadeem, I have one follow-up question. May I ask it?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead, Steve.
The information about the incline on the driveway brought this to mind, but when someone is driving up that driveway, exiting the building onto the street, I'm wondering about the visibility to see pedestrians or cyclists that are coming crosswise to the driveway from either direction, either on the sidewalk or directly on the side of the street. And whether or not there's any plan to put any kind of mirrors at the entrance to provide the residents better visibility to see if somebody is about to encroach on the driveway that's either jogging or walking or cycling.
This is Abby Worgon. Again, the cross section that was just up a second ago basically showed the slope of the driveway. So the car will basically be completely at grade level and horizontal before crossing before needing to cross the sidewalk. So and for the most part, the driver will be positioned right at the front yard of the building with clear visibility in both directions onto the sidewalk. So unless they're just being completely irresponsible and not waiting there, but there's basically an opportunity and a space for the car to stop completely before crossing the crosswalk, before crossing the sidewalk, and checking for pedestrians before entering the street.
And just to also key in, there was a sorry, I didn't realize I was sharing my screen and was going around, but the consultant also took a look at the site visibility and the other opportunity again is the fact that if there is a stop signs installed, you would just reduce all the conflict with regards to bike and vehicles, because those movements would come to a complete stop and you would just eliminate that conflict.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And that will be all from the Complete Streets Commission on the questions.
Okay, opening it up for planning commissioners. And if you could turn your cameras on also when you're engaging, that would make it easier for me to see you and call on you. So I see you, Mayruz. Do you want to start? Or do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had a question for the architect. I was looking at the basically the solar panels on the roof, and in the elevation it kind of shows it just directly on top, but the renderings kind of show it, or it seemed like there's a border. I just wasn't sure, is there something that's going to kind of surround the edges, or are they just going to be kind of exposed on top? Because I think it's all open on that top portion, but I just wasn't sure what that part is going to be.
Yeah. So I can answer that quickly. And I apologize, there is a discrepancy among the drawings and it's a little bit of a work in progress. But the latest thinking is that there is kind of a skirt around it that masks the change in angle of the panels. But like I said, we're still working on the design of that particular element and looking for any feedback on what you think would be a good idea.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had.
Richard, do you have any questions?
Well, the solar panels did come up as one of my thoughts. Is there any way you can make the arbor, the area, the rooftop stair area? In fact, I got to comment, Steve, your last your last photos that showed, give a better view of it from the pictures that we have that we were given, the elevations. It just sort of looks like a wall up there, but the pictures that you showed a few minutes ago clearly made it look better. But it still looks to be, the roof line maybe could be changed the angle so it blends in better. And I must say that the top of the elevator overrun, I like the gable aspect. Initially, I thought, geez, it'd be good if you had gables on both sides. But I've learned after hearing your presentation, your ideas as to why you did what you did is good, and I can understand it. But you've got this sort of box behind the elevator overrun. I don't know if you can modify it or put a gable on it, make it look better. But the building aspect that holds up the solar panels, any way you can modify that, I think would certainly enhance the overall appearance. I also wondered about maybe having balconies on the left side below the gable. Again, I understand what you're trying to do, and I think you've done a good job of it. I don't know if it would enhance it or not. Maybe it would become too symmetrical. But I do commend you on what you've tried to do, and I've gotten a much better idea of it since your presentation. Just that rooftop arbor kind of thing. And let me just see, there were some excellent questions from Streets. And as a biker, I think you did answer the questions on getting the bikes up and down. So I think that's pretty much my questions there. Thank you.
Susan, any questions?
Yeah, I am going to kind of touch on, this is for the architect as well, the gable question. Like Richard, my initial thought was why there weren't two gables on the front of the building. And I do understand from your presentation that I presume was a very conscious decision not to do that. Because personally, I think it might enhance it, but just curious about why the decision was made.
Sorry, I I don't know what I'm supposed to answer or not, but that was very much a conscious decision. And yes, we considered that. I think we wanted to announce the entry on one side and distinguish there's a kind of a game being played with the asymmetry of the building on the ground floor and the building on the second and third floor, that I think we feel that is appropriate.
Okay. That answers my question.
I'm just interested in, I mean, I feel like we've gotten a good explanation about that choice. And I'm just wondering if there were any other elements from the Canon Design Group's feedback that you did incorporate or think might be worth incorporating into the design.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry, I meant to get into more detail about that. I mean, I feel like a lot of their comments, and I don't know if you got a chance to look through it, they were quite cosmetic, and it had to do with window dressing and, bringing slightly more, I would say, traditional Mediterranean detailing, such as how the roof is treated. So, I feel like they largely actually liked our design, and they kind of, had to make, well, whatever. When you ask people to comment, they make comments, and I just didn't want to do decorative, exchanges. I kind of was looking for more major things to do. So I totally appreciate where they were coming from. And if you guys saw some comment that they made that you feel could be integrated, we'd be happy to obviously revisit that.
Okay. I see our 4 commissioners. Is there anyone that I'm not seeing that's on?
Gunit?
Yeah.
I have a couple.
Oh yeah, Eric, there you are.
Yes, there I am, hiding up the top. I have 2 questions. One I think will be for Chris, and the other is for anybody. Just to confirm, the elevator overrun is an actual overrun. That is, there's no elevator access to those 2 rooftop decks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And the other has to do with landscaping. That isn't something that we've heard very much about, and I'm interested because there's a landscape plan, and the challenge of a very narrow building like this is you have no room to do anything. And I thought it was rather clever to be able to put the place where you hide the staging area for the bins behind some landscaping, but the renderings, the actual renderings don't show any of the landscaping really so far. And I understand that the drawings are still in somewhat of a flux here, but it does seem to me that that's an opportunity to do some softening of the facade and some good things to the facade in a way that is at the ground level, which is one of our concerns in this. And so I'm wondering if somebody can address the landscape in a little bit more detail. What if there are actual plans, what those plans are. We do have some pictures of possible things that can be done. We do have the landscaping plan, which shows certain things. But I'd like somebody to bring those together for us, to the extent that that's, in a way that you can talk about it tonight.
Well, I appreciate that comment, and I couldn't agree more that it would be great if the landscaping were in the model and the renderings. I think landscape often, covers up the necessary sins of architecture. So I do think that we want to show those in the renderings as we move forward. And then I don't know, that there was some clever movement in where the plants were placed. There's I don't know if you noticed a slight angle to the path towards the entryway. So there's kind of a baffling aspect that the landscape design had. And we actually collaborated quite closely with Abby, the developer, who's a landscape designer of sorts. So I don't know if he wants to talk at all, but yes, I agree that we should feature that much more prominently in the renderings and kind of take credit for the effort that we made. So thank you.
I can say just a few words, if I may. The landscape design, the landscape plan, I should say, is relatively detailed. We basically have detailed out all the different species of plants that are proposed. It is a very small area. We just about meet the 60% softscape area requirement, some of that is achieved by using Carapia ground cover. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a sort of a drought-tolerant ground cover that's very hardy. You can walk on it, and it can be mowed, but you don't have to mow it. So that whole area, sort of behind the water feature, where the trash staging is. And around the PG&E vault, underground vault area is all ground cover. This Carapia plant that I'm talking about. I'm going to share my screen just quickly. Again, it's probably have to zoom in a little bit to be able to see it. Oops.
I can share mine.
Are you guys able to see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So like I said, there's not a lot of space available for landscaping, but we did basically pack in as much as we could in those areas. Initially, we had 3 street trees, but the fire department didn't really like them because they would interfere with their ladder access, and the one we have now has had to become a little bit smaller. So we packed in plants wherever we could. There's not a lot of it, but it's there nonetheless. And this is the Carapia area that I'm talking about. So this will be all green. The ramp is ADA compliant, so it has to be there, the front access. This is the emergency exit door in this area. And this door here, which sort of empties out onto the Carapia, is the emergency access or the pedestrian access from the parking area. And that's about it. And there is actually, there's a little strip over here where we're going to plant additional stuff. And there's an arbor or a trellis across the driveway entrance, and which will be covered with. So that trellis extends all the way from there. If you can see my cursor, all the way down to this point over here. So it actually even spans over the trash area, and there are a couple of I forget the name of the species now, but there's 2 plants that are meant to the vine plants, lavender trumpet vine. I think that's what they are. That would be that would grow on top of that trellis. And again, these are the species. In the back, which you're probably not as concerned about, we do have some plantings in the ground, and then also these sort of living walls against the back wall, which there's some photos of potential versions of them to use. I'm going to stop talking now.
Well, let me follow up. What about the water feature? Because that just is a label on the drawings. What's that going to consist of in your mind?
Yeah, so the water feature, it will be an illuminated waterfall. So it's because it's relatively small available area. It's more vertical in nature. So it will have a catch basin in the front with like river rocks that will sort of capture the water coming off of the waterfall, and it will filter it and pump it back up. And there were some sort of inspiration photos. We haven't really detailed it out 100%, but there were, I think, 3 different inspirational photos for what it might look like. But it's going to be somewhat contemporary in nature. It will be relatively maintenance-free because of the filtration that we're planning on using, some UV filtration plus particulate filters. And it will be illuminated at night, so it'll look really nice. Because you can really see it all the way down Lyell, as you're approaching the intersection. So I think we'll put a lot of effort and thought into it, and it'll be a piece of art. That's the way I'm sort of looking at it right now.
Okay, thank you. I won't ask if you've considered having ivy go up the facade of the building. that won't be a question. I just want to say again, thank you, Steve. Thank you for a great report, and Abby and Chris also for a very good presentation. It was very helpful. Thank you to all of you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other commissioners on that I'm not seeing? No. Okay. So I think we move to public comments.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Vito.
No problem. Let me go down the list here. Let me start at the bottom. Last 4 of the phone number is 8913. Did you want to speak on this item? 8913.
Are we going to provide a time limit for the speakers? 3 minutes is usually typical.
That's up to both chairs, but yeah.
Yeah, 3 minutes is the right
Thank you.
number, Chris.
Salim, would you like to speak on this item?
Yeah.
Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm Salim. I'm a member of South Bay YIMBY. I grew up in Los Altos, and most of my friends growing up and most of my family have been pushed out of Los Altos because of how unaffordable the housing is. I was kind of astonished watching the presentation. They've made 3 major modifications. They've gotten conflicting advice over 3 years of process. And reading the report, it's clear that at every meeting they go to, they get another endless stream of recommendations. It is really sad. We're forcing people to go through a labyrinth of red tape just to build 4 homes. And it's a clear reason why housing is so expensive. Every year of delay adds costs. It means compounding interest on any loans they have. This is partly why it's so hard to afford Los Altos. So I hope you approve the project as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Sounds good. And next person, Marty. Marty, did you want to speak on this item? No? Okay. And next up is Dee. Dee, would you like to speak on this item? No? Okay. And who else is the last person? Trying to go up.
I do see Phil Underwood with his hand up. So
Phil? Go ahead, Phil. But let me unmute you first. Hold on. Ask to unmute. Phil, go ahead. If you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, you can hear okay?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm on the board of the residents of 396. So firstly, Abby, we've not met, but I appreciate some of the things in what you presented. And I think we're close to coming to an agreement between 396 and your development. So I'm optimistic on that and no problems. You gentlemen have touched on, ladies and gentlemen have touched on some things that are important, but I think we're glossing over. Steve Golden, I'd be happy to walk down the road with you. You're going to lose a lot more than 1 parking space with this development because you're going to have to recurb it to be safe to pull out. If you look at the Friends of Los Altos report email that came out about a week ago, it talked about the gross underplanning of parking on First Street. And I understand there are limitations to what you can do with regard to the specific developments, but we've been hearing about a street plan for this side of First Street for over 3 years, and all the commissions keep ignoring it, the city keeps ignoring it, and it's getting worse. You're going to lose a lot more parking spaces. You already have delivery vehicles, and that question was asked, having to double park to drop in their Amazon, FedEx, UPS, DHL, you name it, deliveries. With all the developments that you're approving to put up on First Street, we're in desperate need of a plan that addresses pedestrians, addresses parking, as there's grossly insufficient parking, and addresses the delivery vehicles that will only increase with the number of buildings going up on First Street. Probably not going to happen with just 4 units of 440, but with everything that you are approving, we just keep ignoring the problem for pedestrians, for safety, for parking, for delivery. I've raised this a number of times, and I have no idea why, as far as I can see, there's no active plan to work out what the heck to do. At 396, and this hits the project you discussed yesterday, there are 4 one-unit developments. 3 of those have 1-bedroom developments, units. 3 of those have 2 cars parked on the street. What you're approving up and down with on 1 bed, just allowing 1, with all the developments, with the parking, not allowing any for guest visitor parking. Seriously, these commissions need to be looking at what to do, and we're way behind as a city, the curveball, in actually doing that. So my comment is not specific to 440, it's what we're doing on the whole of First Street or not doing that desperately needs to get done. I've raised this many times. I know it keeps coming up. It's raised as a priority issue, but it seems that we're just ignoring it for reasons I don't understand. And with that, I'll take a breath and thank you for your time. I hope that sooner or later, something will begin to happen.
Thank you, Phil. And let me go. I believe that is it, Chair Bodnar.
Chair, this is Abby Aarons, and I would like to speak.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share with all of you, I'm at 1 Main Street, Ashante Hotel. I have worked with Abby Bourgon. Believe it or not, 2 Abbies in one group might be too many, but not with your Abby on board. Mr. Bourgon is an exceptional quality builder. He is an involved community member. His family has been incredibly involved. They see this property as their future. With 2 girls off to college, it won't be long until they make 440 their own home. And that's one of the reasons, or main reason, that this particular piece of property was acquired by him. So thank you so much. You can count on whatever materials, they'll be absolutely top quality and well done. Thank you.
Okay. And so going up the line here. Phil. I believe that is it. So.
So I think we now have giving the applicant an opportunity to rebut. So 5
Right.
minutes
Right. The applicants are given 5 minutes to rebut.
or address any of the comments.
Yes.
I don't really have much to add at this point. Thank you for the kind words, Abby. I understand Phil's concerns about parking. Obviously, with all the development that's going on, that's going to be an issue. But as far as 440 is concerned, we currently have there's only 1 parking space one available parking space in front of this property, and actually, I believe it's even redlined currently because the rest of it is taken up by the driveway. So we're basically shifting the driveway over to the right. So that's there's no change there. The only thing that's going to happen is the current crosswalk, which is not ADA compliant in terms of width and so forth, is going to shift over onto our property. So yeah, I don't think there will be a available parking space in front of this property. But that's mainly, I believe, because of the redesign of the crosswalk. So that's basically all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I think we turn it over to Complete Streets Commission for their deliberation and recommendation or any other action.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to take it back to the commissioners and then seek any feedback that you may have to the city staff or to the applicant. This is a fairly simple project, so hopefully we can be efficient in time.
None from me.
Okay. Stacy, Steve, Tom. Very well. So are we ready to make a recommendation in that case?
I move that we recommend this project move forward to City Council.
Okay, very well. Do I have a second? Steve? Is that a second? You're muted, I think, Steve.
Yes, thank you. I second it.
Okay, let's quickly go through the roll call here. Stacy?
Yes.
Suzanne, yes.
Yes.
Steve, yes.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Great. And I'm going to check whether Cindy has signed on. Is Cindy on by chance?
I'm checking right now, Chair.
No.
I don't see her on, Chair.
Okay. And Suresh Venkatraman.
No.
I guess if he were, he would be, I would hear his voice. So I'm going to assume that they continue to be absent. So, and I would vote yes. So in that case, we have a 5-0 in favor of this project. So we recommend to the Planning Commission and City Council approval. Congratulations to the applicant. Thank you.
And now we pass it off to the Planning Commission, and we just want to remind all the commissioners that when the City Council started doing the virtual meetings, one of the requirements was that you do a voice vote for each of the motions. So you do have to unmute yourself, say yes or no for the project, just so we have it on the record. That was something we've been doing for the last year and a half now. So.
All right, thank you. Okay, I want to open it up for discussion. Does anyone want to go first on the Planning Commission?
I can go.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I think the first thing that I wanted to mention was, and this has to do with your project, but it's also about the project next door, 451st Street. I think that project looked very different when we recommended it. And the council ended up changing the design. And, you know, the reason I'm bringing this up is because those changes and the driveway issue affected your project, which I think was very successful before. So I just think we need to be really aware of what changes that the council's making, because it ends up affecting a lot of other things down the line that I don't think they're aware of. So, you know, we lost 3 units because of this change, and the driveway issue, which I think we all really liked, even the applicant liked. So I'm really disappointed, but I'm just gonna try to, you know, fix what we have now. With that said, I think there's a couple things that could be improved on this. I think that the front elevation is just kind of lacking for me. I think it has to be symmetrical and more dynamic. The one gable element on the left and the flat side on the right, I just think it's a little odd. I think that mirroring it and overhanging the roof more is really going to make it pop out and like I said, be more dynamic. I don't really agree with the comments that Canon Design gave, but I think that there's aspects like duplicating the gable element, more of a roof overhang, more articulation, railings on the first level instead of the wall. I think you could add more details that align more with the transitional aesthetic that you're trying to achieve, because right now the aesthetic is very broad. There's no specific style that it aligns with. And then finally, the transition aspect. So there's no reason why you shouldn't raise the height of this to match with the buildings on either side. I think both buildings on either side are taller than yours. But I think that we have to recognize the bigger picture here instead of just this one building. So increasing the top so that it covers the elevator overrun, which is sticking up behind it, you know, making sure that it syncs up with both buildings, I think is really important. I don't care if the height is more than the maximum. I care about the design of the entire street. And I think that that's why we have to look at this as a whole street and not just your building. The roof decks for 301 and 302, I think that having a better transition, I think is really important. It looks like it's just kind of sticking on the roof. I'm glad that the solar panels have kind of a skirt around it, but I think it just needs to feel more residential. It kind of looks industrial right now. So, you know, maybe having a different railing system around the perimeter, maybe incorporating the facade into it more. Just something that makes it look part of the building and not placed on top of the building, if that makes sense. But I would recommend city council approval for this, with the note that I hope the council doesn't significantly redesign once we send it off to them. And that was all I had. Thank you.
Who'd like to go next?
I'll go ahead. I would echo a lot of what Meru said, particularly with regards to the symmetry of the front facade. I think it would be a cleaner, more residential looking building if they did that. But having said that, I also would say, let's send it on to the council at this point.
Next.
I'll go if you want.
Sure, thanks, sir.
I echo both Maris and Susan in what they said. I think the building can be recommended. I would just like to see, again, I guess this is becoming my thing, landscaping as an actual part of the building and not just something around the building. So the more that they can do, and that would help to soften some of the effect, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing with this. So encourage them to do that. I do like what I heard about that, and I would just like to see more if possible. It is challenging to do a very narrow front. There's a lot you have to do and not a lot of space to do it in. And so there will be some constraints there. The symmetry does make some sense, that would help. So, but I will support moving this forward.
I'll jump in here.
Yep.
You're getting ready to call me anyhow. I'll go back to my first comment on the elevator overrun. I'm glad to see that two other people were sort of agreed. You've got a box sitting behind the gable. You could just raise the pitch of the gable a little bit and make the box a gable. It would eliminate that boxy looking thing. I'm content with just one gable on one side. If you wanted to put it on the other, it doesn't really matter to me. I still don't like the boxy look from the staircase building, whatever the heck you want to call it. Is just somebody just said it looks like somebody just plopped it on top. Whatever you can do to minimize it. And also said earlier, Steve's software that he was showing earlier gave a better picture of it looking from Lyle towards the building. It looked much nicer, but it still is there and it shows. And it's also going to show from Foothill Expressway, which does not enhance that Los Altos feel. That's about all I've got. Yes, I like it. I would approve it. Make the changes, make it, those few little things would certainly, I think, make it more attractive. But yes, I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm in favor of this project. I'd reiterate what Commissioner Ahi said. I was really disappointed that City Council changed the shared driveway, and I think it has had really long-lasting implications. We lost 3 housing units in a time when we're supposed, all of our emphasis is supposed to be on increasing housing, and so it's like just shows that some decisions that we make we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And then I also think that the long-lasting implication is that the pedestrian experience in this area with 2 egresses is going to be significantly impacted. And so that was like an easy one we could have avoided on a really small lot. And when we talk about developing other areas, we specifically talk about how we don't want to create these cutouts in the pedestrian experience. So I think that is really unfortunate. I will say though that I think that the facade and the change to the style has been significant since the last time we saw it, and I think it was a project that we, at least I, while I was comfortable with it, I think it's so much more enhanced. I really do like the style a lot more. I think it's very crisp. I like this contemporary take on the Mediterranean architecture. I appreciate the materials. They do look very fine and refined, and the colors are incredibly warm. And in looking at the examples of like this crisp Mediterranean style architecture that is on page 3 of the architect's packet, I do like the asymmetry of the gable in one of the examples here that I think they're trying to replicate. And I do think their intention of creating sort of making the entry stand out is accomplished when they do that. I do think that the rear could benefit though from some just more residential touches. Not that it's going to be, seen, but especially this, I do think that it would benefit from it. I think that there could be, as Commissioner he said, a little bit more detail. I mean, it's almost too stark, too bare, and so I wouldn't do as much as what was recommended by the Canon Design Group. I do think some of that is just sort of cutesy touches, but I would consider adding a little bit more railing, and I do like also the recommendation about making the roof line a little taller so it's in sync with the neighboring properties, because this is really it's like a sandwiched in between much bigger projects. So it will flow better, I think, if it's in line with them. And otherwise, those are my only comments, and I hope that the process goes smoother from here on forward for you. So, are there any other comments? I think we covered everybody. John, you just popped up. Did you have something? Did I miss anything before we take it?
I was just, before one of the commissioners makes a motion, I was just jotting down the notes and items I heard, and I heard, I think all of the commissioner expressed some concerns with the design of the project, but yet talk about moving it on to the city council. And that's a little awkward, because you're moving a project forward to the city council that, looking at the record and what I've heard this evening, you have concerns with. And it seems to me that it would be a little bit more appropriate to refer the project back to the applicant to see if they can address some of the concerns, do some changes to the design of the building, incorporate some of the recommendations from commissioners tonight to get it to a point where you can say, we're comfortable with the design. We like the amendments that have been done. We're comfortable moving it forward as a complete package to the city council, rather than here's a building and we think XYZ things should be done to the building and you take care of it, council. I know it's a bit more time and it's a bit more expense for the applicant, but I do believe that you're sending the council a more baked project than what I'm hearing this evening.
Okay. Mariz, do you want to list off some of the recommendations that you made, and then we can see if we have consensus from the commissioners?
Sure. Yeah.
John, I think it's just to the extent that some of these are too subjective, in that, I don't want us to be designing from the dais in terms of making little tweaks, but let's try this.
Okay.
Let's try this.
I mean, I think that the main kind of key points, the one part was the symmetrical aspect. And then another aspect was kind of the roof kind of structure, which I think the architect mentioned hasn't been fully developed yet. And then kind of the accents that we all kind of discussed. So I guess I would be curious if the architect is open to those suggestions, or if, what his feeling on it is, because, and basically if we made sense with how we kind of describe stuff. So I would want to maybe see what the architect thinks and the applicant.
That's good.
I'm going to take a quick stab at the comment regarding symmetry. We've put a lot of thought and effort into this. We have several other sort of renditions of this project with symmetric, almost symmetrical gables and not. At the end of the day, we basically felt that this building needs to transition between the contemporary aspect of the building at 450 and the more traditional building next door at 396. To be honest, the double gable just did not look right. One of the issues was we were having a hard time making the gables the same size. If you look at the floor plan, the upper floor plans, this lot is so narrow that all those room widths are just about being acceptable in terms of practical widths. So if we were to add a gable on the right hand side, it would be over the master bedroom, and that gable, as the way the floor plan is designed, would be a smaller gable than the left hand side, significantly smaller. So the way to solve that problem is to make that master bedroom wider, maybe just in the front of the building, make it wider, but then now it cuts into bedroom number 2. The window is in bedroom number 2, and it makes that bedroom really awkward. So there's some practical reasons, to be honest, why a second gable wasn't added, but really more significantly, it just didn't look as good. So I do realize it's somewhat subjective, how it looks, but we do have elevations with both gables, and it just didn't look right. So that's, I just wanted to add that. I'll let Chris speak to that as well. As far as the PV structure goes, a lot of the other buildings that have been approved don't even show their photovoltaic systems. And nowadays, there's no way you can get Title 24 approval without energy production. And around here, PVs are the only way to do it. So all these other buildings are going to have sort of similar issues in having PVs that look good on their roof. We decided to actually try to incorporate that into the building design and actually show it and try to make it look good. I do agree there's more work we can do. Once we put the 3D models together, we realized some of the panels were visible from the underside, from the street level, which is why we came up with that skirt idea. I think we can reposition, we can reduce the tilt angle on the PV panels a little bit more. Actually, reduce the tilt angle so they don't stick out as much, and still be okay in terms of energy production. And we can also perhaps change the angle to face them more towards southwest, and which will still be okay. And that will reduce the bulk of that whole structure, and do a better job at making it sort of blend in with the rest of the stair structure. So I do feel that's a comment valid, and that's a valid comment, and we'll put some effort into that. But I don't know. I'm sort of partial to keeping the gable as a single gable the way it is right now, and I'll let Chris speak to it if he has any more to add.
Yeah, I concur, and I'm not just agreeing with Abby because he pays the bills, but we did try hard, and the thing he brought up, which I sort of forgot about, is the slight asymmetry of the floor plan. Obviously, architecture is about artifice too, so you can disguise asymmetries, and it is traditionally done in architecture. But I would suggest, I still support the single gable, but I think that there might be a way of articulating the other side in a kind of more minor way, slightly differently and not as boxy. I mean, there still are options of addressing that balance. And I think it really stems for me from the opening of the garage being so kind of big and low on one side, and then the sort of announcement of the entryway on the other side being less wide of an entry, but a taller, more prominent element. So there is this kind of asymmetry in the facade that's very hard to resolve. So I still support the single gable from my, subjective architect's opinion.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to speak for the entire commission, but I think that for me, it's not a make it or break it, the one gable. I think that more so, just like you said, the articulation, adding some more articulation to make it more dynamic. And then, making it fit better and transition better with the two projects on either side. I think that, I trust the architect and the applicant to kind of handle those details as it gets to city council. So I personally am fine with moving it forward and just having the single gable.
I'm comfortable with that too, but I'm looking, if I would, I'm looking at image on page 3 of their packet, and it has an example of one, and I think it looks quite good.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned it. I think it was a good explanation about why it doesn't work from a functional standpoint, so I'm okay with it as well. But I would like to see something done, as was mentioned, to just give a little more definition to the front facade.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
But again,
too.
leave it to them to see what works.
I wonder if, yeah, and I'm happy with the single gable. I wonder if the thing that bothers me is the rooftop deck. If the outdoor kitchen was moved from the right side, it wouldn't give that larger presence, the appearance of that large building on the top. Maybe move it back sideways. That's the main thing, is that, and the elevator overrun. If there's some way that could be blended, coordinated with that gable, I think it would make a lot of difference. But I'm happy with the single gable, and I understand now why they did it, given the windows and the width of the rooms.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, if I could speak for a bit again, I forgot to mention, I totally support what you're saying about the elevator overrun and rising the parapet of that gable on the left. And I think we can propose that as your recommendation without really modifying the design much at all. And I also just would reiterate that the solar design will take all the comments, and I think with some minimal adjustment, we can make it more integrated looking, which is really what I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, also you did the building next door, and I think that roof deck is really successful. So we know you're capable of a good roof deck architecturally. So yeah.
Okay. Any other feedback that we need to all get on board on? No. Okay. John?
I think whoever would make the motion, I see it as being done a couple ways. Just the Planning Commission recommending to the City Council the approval of this project with some modifications, and maybe list out some suggested modifications, or the other way would be to just recommend the approval of the project to council as submitted. So.
Okay. Does anyone have?
If I may, it might be a good idea to, if there are specific things you want to see, that you recommend approval to City Council, but ask that the applicant work with staff to accomplish certain things before it goes back to council.
Okay. Anyone want to propose that?
So moved.
No, I meant the actual language.
Well, I'll give a stab to it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the project subject to the applicants working with staff to incorporate our suggestions relating particularly to the elevator overrun and the um, the solar panel array, as was suggested in our discussion here, and landscaping. So,
And articulation of the other side of the elevation, the
right, yes.
front elevation. Okay. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 That the ayes are unanimous. Motion passes 5-0.
Great.
Thank you, commissioners.
I just wanted to thank the commissioners and the staff. It's been a long journey, but it's all worth it right now. So thank you again. Looking forward to moving this project along. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item. 355 First Street.
Yes, and that would be me. So let me just start my. So this is another SB 330 project, which is why we're having the joint meeting. We're limited to 5 per state law. Because we're limited in the number of meetings, we do have the CEQA consultant here, Terry from EMC Planning, and Gary Black from Hexagon. So if you have CEQA questions, I'd ask that you refer them to Terry, and specific questions about the traffic impact analysis that was done, please refer those to Gary Black. So this,
Do we want to do the ex parte?
oh
right
yeah,
off
yeah,
the bat
go ahead.
this
Yeah,
time?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So at this time, it's a practice. If you've had any ex parte communications with the applicant or others related to the project, now is the time to disclose that. So, and that's for all the commissioners on the call. So.
I don't see anyone on the Complete Streets Commission, so it's a no.
Okay, and then Chair Bodner, or did anybody else? No.
Sorry. No.
Okay.
Anyone?
Nope.
And before we go on, would it be appropriate to take a 5-minute bio break since we've been doing this for 2 hours and 15 minutes?
Yes, of course.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Eric. Okay, we'll be back.
Are we ready to reconvene?
Sounds good.
I think we are.
Okay, let's reconvene the quorum. If you're on the Complete Streets Commission, can you please turn on your camera so we can establish quorum? Okay, Suzanne, Stacy, Tom, and Steve, we have quorum again.
And I see everybody that we had on before as well. So we are 5.
So Mr.
Dave and Shelley
Persicone,
missing.
Mr. Persicone, you ready to start your presentation again?
Sure. Yes, as I was saying earlier, we can only have 5 meetings, so we have a big group here. We have Terry from EMC Planning and Gary Black from Hexagon. Just a little context for the project. They are asking for a design review permit, a tentative map for 50 condos, a request for a CEQA clearance. There are 4 lots involved that would be merged and then re-subdivided, which is allowed per the Subdivision Map Act. They are asking for 1 density bonus concession and reduced parking ratios for 12 of the parking stalls, which is allowed by density bonus law. Just a general overview, we've already gone through most of this already, but just so we're all on the same page. So there are 2 phases to SB 330, the pre-application phase, and then the formal submittal phase. So just a little bit of background. This current application, so they did have an original application in October of 20. They revised it. So the project before you is basically what they submitted last December. I organized a virtual community meeting with property owners within 1,000 feet. We had a whopping 1 person attend the meeting. We then had a study session with the Planning Commission, a study session with the Complete Streets Commission, and then the formal submittal under SB 330 occurred in April. There were a couple rounds of resubmittals, and then finally in October, the project was deemed complete and the fire department gave us their conditional approval letter. And then the final submittal before you was given to staff on November 12th. So this is the streetscape. You will notice the 389 project on, I guess, my right of the screen. And then this is the project where my mouse pad is, or my mouse is or circulate over. They did incorporate a project. We do have another 12 unit project at 349. I asked them to do this so that the commissions could have a realistic understanding of what's really going on there. And so this project will come before the commission probably in mid 2022, but this is the project before you today, 355 First Street. So the zoning is CDR3. The general plan designation is downtown commercial. And as stated, there are 4 parcels involved that will be merged and re-subdivided. So for the most part, the project is compliant with the code, with a couple key exceptions, which I will go over, which are allowed by density bonus law. It does meet, as indicated on the sheet and in your staff report, most of the design control and findings within the Los Altos Municipal Code. There was a peer review done. The peer review is attached to the staff report. I won't go through all of them. I was going to hit up the major kind of highlights. And the applicant's architect, Jeff Potts, is on the call. They did step back the 4th floor. The ground floor was enhanced. The corners of the building were modified, and the garage entries were modified to have additional design attention. As a reminder to the Planning Commission, because this pre-application was filed before the objective design standards took effect, that the design standards that the council adopted carry no weight with this project and cannot be used to evaluate this project. So the density bonus concession is for height. It is an on-menu concession. In addition, by state law, they are allowed to ask for an unlimited number of waivers if they can show it would physically preclude the construction of the development. And so one of the ones that it's kind of unique, I've done consulting and worked in a couple of different cities, and there's this requirement related to height and the elevator shaft. And I know that's come up in several projects before the Planning Commission. And we do have statements from the architect demonstrating that the waiver is necessary for development of the project. They are asking for reduced parking spaces for 12 parking stalls. Now, in terms of CEQA, there was a mitigated neg deck that was prepared by EMC Planning. We did circulate it for 20 days. We received no comments. During the preparation of the mitigated neg deck, we did receive a letter from a Native American tribe, and per AB 52, we did consult with the Native American tribe, and there are mitigation measures in the CEQA document that if there is anything found of a cultural resource, that work has to stop, and we must follow the protocols of the Native American tribe. The only real major issue or concern with the project is there is a disagreement in terms of the number of moderate income units that have to be a part of the project. And so the base density of 39 requires that 6 units be provided. The city standard is 4 moderate with 2 low or very low. The applicant is arguing that there should only be 3 moderate and 3 very low. And so as to not have a long drawn out project, staff is recommending condition of approval number 13, which conditions the project to provide the 4 moderate. But the city attorney, and Eric is on the call representing the city attorney's office, prepared a joint letter with the applicant's attorney to get guidance from the state HCD to potentially resolve the issue. But the project is being conditioned to require the 4 unless we receive additional direction from the state otherwise. In terms of complete streets considerations, they are doubling the number of Class 1 parking spaces. They have more than the required Class 2 spaces for the site. The nearest bus stop is approximately 0.3 miles away at Lisle and San Antonio. Based on the traffic report that was prepared by Hexagon, the VMT will have less than a significant impact. And the traffic impact analysis did show the project would not adversely impact local intersections. The project is consistent with the general plan, specifically Housing Element Policy 2.1, which encourages maintaining zoning for a wide range of housing types and densities, and housing element program 4.3.4, which it does encourage maximum densities on parcels. Everyone within 1,000 feet was notified of the CEQA document, of the study sessions that happened, of this meeting. Story poles were installed, and there was a property posting that was actually been up there for way more than the minimum. So the minimum in Los Altos is only 10 or 20 days, but I actually asked the applicant and they agreed that their sign's actually been up for quite a long time, just to give the community more notice for the project. Within the last week, we have received a few community concerns, comments, whatever you want to call it. There was a concern about a shadow impact, and the applicant's architect will be sharing some visuals related to shadows. There were some design implications from Mr. John Baer. He presented an email to staff when the project started early on. A peer review was done. And within the last week, we did receive an email requesting that First Street become a one-way street, which I understand from the engineering department that would take a little bit more study, and that would not be part of this project. So at this time, staff is recommending for the complete streets to recommend adoption to the City Council, and for the Planning Commission to recommend adoption of the mitigated negative declaration and attachment 11, which is the mitigation monitoring program, to the City Council, and to recommend approval of the design review and the vesting tentative map to the City Council. And that concludes my initial presentation.
Thank you, Guido. I think in the interest of time, the Complete Streets Commission will reserve all the questions once the applicant has had the chance to present his presentation.
Great.
Any questions of planning commissioners or staff? Okay, seeing none, we will move to the presentation.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass it off to Jeff Potts, Albert, and Kevin. They're from the development team. And they have 15 minutes. So.
Good evening. Can you all hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Get this started here. Good evening, Jeff Potts, SDG Architects. I want to thank you for the time tonight and getting both commissions together for us. We do have a project here in the CDR3 zoning downtown. I understand that there's some concern on the size of the project. I would just follow up to the previous meeting and say, we've gotten 4 lots here together to create one composed project, and you see what can happen when you leave the lot in between the 2 new projects, as what happened down the street. So the allowable density on this project was determined based on some massing without the density bonus and the concession of the upper floor. That came to 39 units. With the density bonus of 11 units, we have a 50-unit project here with a mix of studios, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. And we have 6 proposed BMRs at this time per Guido's outline. I'm sure you're all aware, but I'll just go over it again, what's going on First Street, and it was reiterated in the previous project. We are here at 355 First Street. It's actually 4 addresses here. And just for some context, 389 First Street is under construction here. Is a 3-story mixed-use building. 425 First Street is under construction here and is a 3-story residential building with a pitched roof. 448, I believe this is beginning construction now. I am missing the project from earlier tonight. that was just recommended for approval here at 3 stories. Everyone's favorite project 396 is here. It's 3+ stories, I would say, residential. And as Guido noted, there's another submittal for this property here on First Street as well that is under consideration. As I said, the project will combine 4 lots along First Street with a variety of structures on the lots, cumulatively about 6,500 square feet. Very underutilized portion of First Street. The combination of the lots in the single building creates a much better use of the land and a cohesive project along First Street. It also allows us to improve a greater portion of First Street with the single project. So we have some cohesive development along there. We've got an alley along the backside, and there's one existing building that's going to remain on First Street there. The new site will provide an additional 1-foot easement along the sidewalk on First, and based on our design, that's larger than that 1 foot, and I'll get into that as we get into some of the landscape design. It's providing a 2-foot easement along the alley for future widening of the alley. We've placed the main entrance on First per the city's guidelines. We placed it sort of 3/4 of the way down the building to help break up the building massing along the street. We opted to have the other exit be more of an emergency type of exit off to the alley, as opposed to providing another exit on Whitney, which would have forced this entry down the street quite a bit further. There's going to be quite a bit of enhanced landscaping along First Street that I'll get into as we get down the road here. Parking accessed off the alley, underground, all hidden from view. We're enhancing the alley landscape significantly along the building edge, as well, with raised planters and varied height walls. This site is a walkers and bikers paradise. It's got a walk score of 90 and a bike score of 95, as you all know, due to all the amenities downtown, and also including a nearby park for more active play for residents. Parking is 2 levels subgrade as noted. The parking standard for the city would require 113 spaces. The parking standard in the density bonus law requires 71 spaces. We are proposing the 113 spaces with the requested waiver of 6-inch reduction in space width for these 12 spaces that are indicated here to 8'6". There's extra space also still remaining against the walls and things in there. There's not quite enough room to not have an overlap here for 9-foot spaces. So we can certainly remove that request and reduce the parking by 4 spaces. But the 8.5-foot wide stalls are very common. And we believe that providing the additional parking above and beyond the 71 spaces that are required up to the 113 that the city would prefer in their zoning is worth that reduction of approximately 10% of the spaces having a narrower width. In the lower level of the garage, we have a bicycle storage area with individual bike lockers, along with a few other bike lockers out in this area. As Guido noted, we're basically doubling up the bicycle parking for the residents, and we are still looking, and I'll show you on the first floor as we get there, we are still looking to potentially increase that, but there's a great deal of work with PG&E and other folks that will have some effect on our ability to do that. But as designed, again, we're 200% or doubling the required parking for the residents, and we've got 50% extra parking of bicycles for the guests of the building. Fairly typical trash room with trash chutes. The trash will be brought up by the building management to a staging area in the alley for pickup and then returned back down to the trash room for future waste. Just quickly, the floor plans again. This area that we've kind of set aside here for, you know, it's labeled as miscellaneous utility. Those things grow quite a bit as you get into the details of these buildings. We're hopeful that we can actually add a little bit of extra bike parking and some extra storage for the units within that space with close proximity to the exit here at the rear. But you know, that remains to be seen, and we don't want to over promise. 3 BMRs on the first floor. Again, we have a mix of studios and 1 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms throughout the building. You can see the BMR locations. One of the features of the building is this interior court to bring light and other, you know, amenities into the center of the building here to make the core more enjoyable for the residents, and we'll get into that landscaped piece of that as well. This is the building corner from Whitney and First Street. We've made several revisions to the design of the building, which I'll get into in a comparison sort of standpoint as we move into the project, but we've refined the materials on the buildings, incorporated more wood element at the focal point corner here, as well as accent elements that break up the building as you go around all 4 sides of it. We've broken up this strong cornice element per some comments from the previous meeting into smaller sections, and we've also lightened it up and thinned it up quite a bit so it's not quite as strong. The building's organized, you know, with a sort of bottom, a middle. We've accentuated this middle band all the way around the building, and then the upper floor, and these step back from one another as they move up the building. And just for comparison, just to kind of walk you through the workshop version of the project is here. The revised current version of the project is here. Again, we've warmed up this wood element along the bottom here and wrapped it further around the corner. We've revised this entry element to get rid of the more storefront commercial looking glazing through here, as well as removing that at the corner of the building and emphasizing this corner more as a feature element all the way up. We've broken the building down into smaller components vertically with this rhythm of the recessed balconies and the varying materials to break these elements down into smaller, less massive elements. And we've revised this sort of groundscape pedestrian experience all the way along the building with varied stepped planter heights to provide green at several levels, as well as provide a little layer of privacy for those outdoor spaces along the first floor, and then street trees that we've pulled out to the edge of the sidewalk, which I will show you as we get into the landscape. Just going back for a second, one of the comments in the peer review was about this corner and how these units and this area in this unit was treated. So we brought that landscape element out around, buffed it up quite a bit to provide the greenery along the street, as well as just a physical buffer to that unit space there. We also incorporated this element and wrapped it around the building further per some of the peer review comments, as well as integrating the trellis elements in that area around the building, and adding this band around to provide a more of a feeling of stepping along there. Oops, going backwards, sorry about that. Again, as we go around down Whitney Street, we've continued this building base with the stone veneer and heavily landscaped as the street sort of slopes down and around the corner, more than it would appear to if you just kind of walk around out there. There are existing street trees and a landscape strip here that there's an effort to maintain in place. And you can just see the variation and the revision to the building, specifically at the corner here, as well as we wrap around to the side and rear. Along the alley, once again, created a base with the stone veneered walls and planters at various heights. Again, a little higher at the balconies to provide a little bit more privacy as you come along that alley. There'll be a staging area for trash tucked in here where the transformers are. And then there are some mechanical elements of the building placed at this corner. Garage entry at the far end has been integrated into the design of this element at the edge of the building, and then the wood element has been placed to sort of break up this side of the building as well. And again, this is the side that will be adjacent to the existing building to remain. We've got about 3 feet to 5 feet along that side here between us and the adjacent building. Still wrapping the third level material around and breaking up this facade with the recessed balcony with the wood feature. Along the street, again, we've chosen to place the main entrance along First Street closer to Whitney. You can see some of the stepping of the planters as we go down here. We've increased sort of the landscape around this entry to make it a little bit more grand and more of a feature with a larger trellis element here, and then carrying these metal trellis with wood bottoms around and some decorative light fixtures around this edge of the building. The ceiling is 20 feet tall. We have a nice glass entry that, again, as you come in here, you're going to see right into that courtyard element that's going to bring a lot of sunlight down into the building and add a nice entry element. Also provides an area to wait for an Uber or a ride or something like that out of the weather there in that recessed entry. So again, the project's providing an additional 12 inches of width in easement along the sidewalk and a new sidewalk. We've actually increased that sidewalk width along this frontage, and we did that so that we could pull the street trees actually out to the curb along the street to provide sort of a more protected environment as you're walking along that street. It also provides sort of a meandering feeling to that walkway, but still maintains the minimum walkway width behind the tree along there. We've also placed some benches along this area of the path coming down, to the corner here with benches, and the bicycle rack is out in front here. And then we've increased this buffer at the corner quite a bit, carrying that landscaped element all the way around this side of the building, again, maintaining this existing strip with trees there, and then enhanced landscaping along the alley portion of the building. This would be the staging area for the trash on trash day. This is our back exit here and the ramp. The courtyard is landscaped in a sort of very subdued Zen sort of landscape for really just very passive recreation and almost just visual relief as you're walking down the halls and through this building. As you come up and down the elevator, you'll have a shot of this courtyard. As you come into the building, you'll see this courtyard and the light coming down through it. We added a roof deck based on some feedback from the last meeting as well. This deck is surrounded by a planter basically all the way around, with some larger planters housing trees around here. There's also some photovoltaic tucked into some of these areas. This was pushed back from the edge of the roof so that as you view the building walking down the street, both down Whitney and First, you really don't see this portion of the building at all as it's pushed back from the roof. And really the elevator tower and stair are tucked right in the middle here too, also to kind of diminish the view of those as you are seeing the building from the street. And we just have a quick shot of the amenities on the roof. It's really a very passive roof deck with just a few sort of separated seating areas all the way around so that people have, you know, the ability to gather in smaller groups around the deck here, and, you know, a little dog area up on top. You can see the stair tower and the elevator override sort of integrated into this feature and surrounded by the trees to further diminish the view of that. And let's see, I'm going to make an attempt to go to a different program here. I might have to stop my share and redo it. Here, let me try this. There we go. So we do have the, I don't know how much time I have left there, Guido, but ping me when we're getting close. We do have the city's model here that we can walk you around various things. We are missing the new building that I saw was in the model that was shown earlier today. So you see 425 first, 389 first, and then our project here. We can zoom in and kind of, you know, take a look as we come down the street. Let's see if I can turn this around. I'm not the expert navigator here. So you can kind of get a view of how the building's kind of integrating into the other newer buildings that have been approved and are currently under construction. We do have a couple of older buildings here that are still remaining, and one smaller building here that's remaining. And I think with that, we're available for any questions, or if you want to see, oh, I'm sorry, let me show you the shadow study that was requested by Guido earlier yesterday or today. And so we've just got June along here at various times of the day. Obviously the least shadows produced by the building in June. I can also show you this in SketchUp as well. March and September, a little bit more shadowing. You can see it doesn't really get onto the other properties. This will be a 4-story building, supposedly sometime in the near future. This shadow is onto the alley and the parking lot adjacent. And then as you get into winter, of course, we've got our deepest shadows along this edge here, around the alley and down Whitney, and then here at the building across the street. And now I will answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I guess it's public comments next, right? No, so questions from the Complete Streets Commission. So I think I'm going to invite the commissioners to put forth the questions to the applicant and the city staff. Commissioner Ambiel, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions about bike parking. Question number one, the 27 lockers that are in the furthest corner of the lowest level of the basement, are there electrical outlets in each one of those, or is the intention that any bike would have to leave its locker and park somewhere in the open to charge?
Yeah, at this time, there's no provision for electrical outlets in each of the lockers. In the past, we have provided a station for charging, or a station or two for charging and or repair. And that may be something that can fit in that area.
Have you considered the security nature of a charging station? Most e-bikes are not cheap, and no one would want to leave their bike in the open. What is your plan for security of an open air charging station?
We have not provided any plan for security for that station. I would hesitate to guess that most people that have an expensive e-bike are probably going to charge it in their unit, because they're not going to want to leave it even in a locker down there. But that's something we could certainly look into, some sort of set aside. It becomes difficult just from a keying and access standpoint to do that. I will say that the garage is, highly illuminated and has cameras for security. Certainly there could be a security camera in the bike room as well.
What is the access to the bike parking? I see that there is a stairwell to the bike parking from the ground level floor. What's the intended ingress and egress of a cyclist? And give me an example of an adult cyclist, such as someone you see here on the meeting today, and perhaps a middle grade student cyclist. How would they leave the building and come back?
They would take the elevator to the main lobby and come back at this point in time.
And they would walk their bike through the lobby. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are there stairs at the lobby entrance that they would have to roll their bike down?
No.
It is at ground
Yes.
level? What is the provision for package delivery?
The package delivery and mail delivery would occur on the first floor in the lobby area. There's a space.
How big is that space?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find out for you.
That would be appreciated. Thank you very much for that. I will defer to the rest of my commission members for additional questions. I have no doubt they'll have some.
Thank you, Suzanne. Further questions from the commission? Okay, I know it's getting late. Does that mean that we're forgetting the questions? Tom, you're muted. I think you want to speak.
Yeah, sorry. So a little bit extension on what Suzanne was saying on the delivery truck. You said there's a thing off the lobby. What about the trucks that would park, the UPS, Amazon trucks? Would they be, is there a separate place for them, or they would be double parked on the road on First Street, or where?
Currently, they would park in front of the building along First Street, presumably not double parked, but parked in a parking space along the front of the building. There's no curb cuts or anything along the front of the building here, so there's ample parking there, additional parking really to what there is now along the front of the building there.
Would there be any kind of a thing that says, for delivery only, or 20-minute or 10-minute minimum parking, or whatever it might be an idea, so people that do delivery, you've got 50 units, there's going to be a lot of deliveries there, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we as a designer and applicant would have no issue with a space of that nature, but I believe that would be really up to the city and the city engineering department if that was even allowed to be placed there. But certainly we wouldn't have an issue with that.
Okay. I don't know if the if the designers are looking into that or not, or city planners. Also, how many parking spots are there for the 50 units total?
As designed with the 12 reduced parking spaces, there's 113 parking spaces.
Okay, that's quite a bit. Is there a requirement to have of number of handicap spots and or number of visitor spots also?
The yes and yes. I mean, technically, if we look at the densities, the state parking code just gives you a number and says handicap and visitors are included in that. If we look at the Los Altos Municipal Code, it's 2 per unit plus a certain number for guests, which in this case comes out to the additional 13. And of those 13, there's a certain amount of required to be handicapped based on the number of parking spaces. And then we always try to have a couple of spaces that can be van sized, but not marked, so that if a particular unit needs a space, they can have one as well. And that's all been incorporated into the design of the garage levels.
Okay, so it's already been listed as shown where those actual spots would be marked out?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from the commission? Complete Streets. Steve.
Hi, we own a condo in a 3-story building, and so I'm familiar with some of potential issues that I wasn't aware of before we owned it. And I want to talk a little bit about not just mail delivery, but I know from experience that when you're having large things delivered like refrigerators, appliances, people move in, move out, that in most condos, there's a dedicated area where trucks are supposed to come and a dedicated elevator that is supposed to be used for that. Is that off the alley? Or is that off First Street? And what's the expectation if it's off the alley as to where those trucks would park and how long they could be there?
Yeah, I mean, currently we do not have in a building of this size with this many units, we would not have a dedicated elevator for like a service elevator type of dedicated elevator. There would be some expectation that, you know, during move in and move out, there's some inconvenience of elevator use, but people would be moving in through the front door, for lack of a better term. We've got a nice wide hallway here, with wide doors along the front, elevators right at the front here. And so people would be moving in and out through that front door. Obviously, in the very beginning of the building, it's a little bit more of a challenge because maybe you got a lot of people moving in and out. But after that initial sort of move in, it's far less frequently occurring. And so it would occur through the main elevator, which is a larger gurney-sized elevator as well. The package delivery room, to answer the previous question, is right here and is about 8 by 12.
So that main elevator, is that facing on Whitney or First Street?
The main elevator is in the center of the building here.
The main entry, yes.
The main entry is facing onto First Street. And then the elevator is right off the main sort of entry across from the courtyard here in this area.
And so the trucks then would probably be either parking either on Whitney or First to wherever they could find access. Is that right?
Yes, I would believe that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Stacy, any questions? I just have one question to the city staff. What is the timeline for the First Street streetscaping?
I'm not, I believe that's more of a question for Marissa if she's still on the phone. I'd have to defer to her on that. But because this is an SB 330 project, I don't believe that was in effect when they filed their pre-app in December of last year. So whatever comes of that plan, it would not have to, it could not be applied to this project, but I'll let Marissa answer the timeline question.
And I am still here. I don't know exactly the timeline of that project since I'm still a little bit new on the scene, but I could find out.
Yeah, can we make it a priority, please, Marissa? I think this is really becoming an urgent matter with all those projects in the pipeline. And we cannot just keep punting on those things. We need to get a timeline figured out very quickly.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I think one thing to consider is if it is kind of coming down to loading zone space, that's something that could kind of be considered independently of a larger project, and perhaps a loading zone space could kind of be designated for, you know, each block, or, you know, kind of like a shared loading zone space so that the truck could pull up and kind of serve multiple buildings on the same street. I don't know that each development would need its own loading zone.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll let the city staff come back with recommendations. There could be perhaps an interim cityscape, streetscaping that we should be thinking about, or some other ideas that we can implement in the short term. But this is becoming a very urgent matter now in terms of how and I don't know, frankly, I don't have the answers, but and I'm not making a recommendation. This is really more on the question side. I don't know how the traffic utilization of the street is going to be impacted with these projects, and we need to be thinking about that.
Okay.
With that, I think these are all the questions from the Complete Streets Commission.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for planning commissioners. Do you have any questions?
The only question that I had was the open area in the center of the building that's completely open to above. I was looking at the civil pages on C 4.0 and C 5.0, and I think I understand, but I just wasn't sure if maybe the architect could kind of explain like what's happening in there, and how it's going to work in terms of drainage and all that.
Yeah, I think I can, if I can get you back on the screen here. There we go. We actually are draining in order to maintain and reduce the overall height of any of the slopes of the roof deck. We're actually draining some of the roof deck into this area as well. And there's a fountain and things in here. That water will be captured in rainwater leaders, and any water that falls on the ground in here will be captured in drains. And then that water is actually being piped in the basement level out to sewer. And I believe it's in the alley, or storm, I'm sorry, storm, and I believe it's in the alley. I can get to their utility plan.
Yeah, I think there's a dotted red line. Yeah, on the one I see from the packet has in the back.
Yeah, that's sanitary.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's going basically, the water's being collected in there. It's going into pipes along the basement ceiling of the first level of the basement, and then it'll tie in directly into the storm.
Okay. And then the impervious or the pervious and impervious surfaces in that middle portion, that would also collect the rainwater as well, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yeah, there'll be drains actually at that grade, we'll call it grade level down in there as well.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got just kind of a quick one. When you were before us, I think it was back in January, most of the comments had to do with the bulk and mass of the building, saying, you know, it was somewhat more appropriate for El Camino than perhaps for First Street. And I appreciate the fact that you've paid some attention to that. The one thing that I'm just curious about, it seems like there could be some more work done on the 4th floor in terms of setting it back, and that was mentioned in the peer review. Is that something you considered?
I mean, I would say that we certainly considered it, but, you know, based on the density and the, you know, BMR requirements, the cost of land and all other aspects of it, you know, giving up that square footage, which would relate to giving up units and just, you know, based on, you know, the fact that we're meeting all aspects of the code and we're, you know, trying to soften that mass as much as possible, you know, we concluded that, you know, we really couldn't step that back, you know, structurally, as well as just square footage wise, it would be detrimental to the building.
And how about in terms of any material choices that could sort of somehow make that a little less massive?
Yeah, I mean, I believe we, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I believe we definitely made an effort, and we're certainly, you know, willing to listen to any other thoughts on those material choices. We made an effort to lighten up the materials based on the last meetings and the peer review to further step these walls out as much as we could, as well as, I'll just go back to the corner here for a second, as well as recessing the, you know, the elements along the balconies here and breaking up that roof line. So I think we made a solid effort to sort of reduce and soften the mass of the building and to create some more sort of discernible pieces of mass down the street.
Okay, thank you.
So following up on that, you know, I'm looking at the dates of the peer review. It's from May, and I'm wondering that you went through a bunch of changes that you made, and I think I wasn't understanding if you made them in response to the January or to the peer review, and if any changes were made after or in response to the peer review. Different than the peer review that I saw previously. This one had more substantive suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to address, we tried to address some of commission workshop comments and Complete Streets comments before the peer review was done on an, I would say not the first view that you guys saw, but some revisions were made. I could go through that peer review in detail with you if you like. I have it loaded here. You know, some of the things we definitely didn't agree with. I mean, some of them were what we expected, push the fourth floor back, which, you know, is a common theme and something we expected to hear. We definitely, you know, addressed this landscaped area both before and after the peer review and his discussion about this. If you look at the peer review, I mean, it was suggested that we put a 8-foot tall hedge all the way along here. I certainly don't want to see an 8-foot tall hedge all the way along there. I made the supposition that the city doesn't want to see an 8-foot tall hedge all the way along there. And I know the resident inside those units doesn't want to see an 8-foot tall hedge all the way along there. So instead of taking it literally, I guess, what we did is we broke up these planters into varying heights and tried to get a little more height at those sort of outdoor spaces for those units that also just gave us a little more play along the street of height, along with the ins and outs of the walls, the ups and downs of the walls. There was some suggestion for some trellis elements, much different than what we did, but we took that idea, let's just say that kernel of an idea, and we, you know, added some trellis detail along here. We wrapped this corner a little more significantly. We added this, I mean, there was a suggestion to add the cornice down here. You know, in lieu of adding the cornice down here, we sort of extrapolated that suggestion into carrying this sort of base material all the way around, whereas before it had gaps in it, which in some ways broke up the building, you know, down the street a little more, but a little less vertically or layered. And so we sort of took that suggestion, you know, into here. You know, frankly, there was just some things about that peer review, which we responded to at Guido's prodding, and line by line, so to speak. But there were certainly some things about it that, that we didn't agree with. But we did sort of try to glean some ideas for tweaks to the massing of the building, to the materials of the building, and some of those things, and try to sort of incorporate those in a different way. That's a long-winded answer to your question, I think.
Okay, can you go back to the entry and describe what you were trying to accomplish with the changes that you made there?
To this slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was, I think that was less something from peer review and something more from the commission. I think there was a suggestion that the entry maybe wasn't grand enough for this large of a building. I can tell you that we went through, you know, no less than 20 concepts, ideas, ways to bulk it up, beef it up, change it up, you know, adding trellis features in the landscape, pulling this out with a stone feature, a lot of things. But, you know, in the end, we did feel like it was a pretty well signaled entry into the building. It's got a large, you know, chandelier in here. We've got the double level of the awnings, with this one's coming out further. We really flanked it and kind of drew you in with the stepping of the stone walls here and the landscape. And again, you know, still have this nice covered waiting area for, you know, pickup, drop off, and a large, you know, glass entry into the building. And you can really see that courtyard as you start to, you know, approach and come in.
Okay. Okay, anyone else have questions? No, okay. Time for public comments?
Sure. I don't prod my customers. I gently push them. So I try to get them to do what the city wants. So anyways, but just light humor at 11 o'clock at night. But let me see who's still awake. That person, Nadine, Marissa, Kevin, Jonathan Weinberg, Dope. D, did you want to comment on this project? No? And Abby, I know this is not your project. Did you want to comment? No? Okay. All right, I think that's it, Chair Bodnar.
Okay. So I guess we close public comments, and there's no need for applicant rebuttal, and turn it over to Complete Streets for their discussion.
Yeah.
All right, back to the Complete Streets. Who wants to take a first stab on deliberation and feedback? I'm sure you're grinning. I can see that, Suzanne. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm always the first one out the gate. I warm it up for the rest of my commissioners. All right, get ready, people. I want to thank the applicant and the designer for providing double the bike parking that is required. Many developments come before us and they just reach the absolute minimum. We know in Los Altos that we are trying to encourage students to ride their bikes to school, for residents to ride their bikes for short trips of, 1 mile, 2 miles or less. The only way we're going to achieve that goal and get the cars off the streets is if we have ample bike facilities, and by providing twice what is the minimum in 34, that goes a long ways towards it. However, that being said, and this is nothing that the applicant can do, it's still insufficient. If you look at 11 3-bedroom units and you consider that families will be living there with a parent that'll each have a bike to ride their child to school at Covington, that's 3 bikes times 11 units, that's 33 of the 34, taken up by only 20% of the units in this building. Now, this isn't something the applicant can solve, but I think it's something that the city needs to carefully take a look at if we really truly are going to provide and encourage cycling and alternative means of transportation. the cars won't magically vanish, and transportation has to be had. So the bikes is the next best issue. I would encourage, as we go forward, that when designers and architects design these buildings, they spend just as much time on the aesthetics and the design of the bike room as they do with the roof decks. When the bike rooms are dark, dank, dusty places at the bottom of the basement that nobody wants to go to, they won't get used. But if they are pleasing places, exciting places, well-lit places, roomy places, people will use them. And that has happened at the company that I work at, where we used to have those dark, dank basement places. They weren't used. But when they were designed to be pleasing with well-lit, nice room, clean, well-tended, well-maintained, ground level access, the use went through the roof. So I think it is an attribute of a building, and I think it's an underutilized opportunity for designers and architects to start integrating that into their whole design scheme and not just tucking it under a stairwell. I would entreat the architects and the designers of this building to pull electrical at a minimum to that 7 bike storage unit so that the residents could take advantage of charging e-bikes. E-bike sales have gone through the roof. They have grown by 780% this year alone. So they're here, they're coming, we need to be prepared for them. And as you pull that electrical to that 7-stall bike storage area, ensure that there's a way that someone can lock their bike to that unit so that it doesn't walk away, and help residents feel comfortable using that place to charge their bikes. And I would suggest offline to the city that we start to consider adding some more bike corral type of parking in this area. As I see all of these buildings going up with a minimal amount of guest parking, it behooves the city to consider having some sort of bike parking like you find off the near the old costume bank with the orange bike rack that has room for 20 bikes. I would ask the city to consider installing something of that in this general neighborhood to accommodate what we hope will be a real increase in cyclists using this location and using bikes to get to and from it. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm looking for hands up. Tom, Steve, Stacy.
I'll go next. Yeah. I'd also like to thank the architect and the developer for making the effort to maximize the parking spaces. I actually think that was a creative and a good move. I like the idea of the 113 spaces by reducing the size of 10% of them. I thought that was well done. And I also really like the idea of having one dedicated EV charging station per unit, because I think that's going to be more and more in demand. I agree with some of the things that Suzanne said, especially about the fact that you're going to see more and more EV bikes, especially as a demographic of older folks downsize into condos and apartments from their houses. A lot of the people that are my peers, almost every one of them now has switched over to an EV bike. They're heavier, they're more expensive. However, they're ridden. And when we think about that as a complete streets commission, I think we really need to think about what happens on First Street with all of these new developments to make sure that we've got a way that cyclists and pedestrians can ride safely. And as well as having some loading zones so that these large trucks aren't parked and double parked for lengthy amounts of time. And I agree with also with Suzanne that if there's a way to increase the bike storage to keep people from having to roll EV bikes down carpeted hallways into units, that would benefit all of the residents in the building. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Steve. Tom, Stacy.
Thanks, Chair. I don't think I have very much to add. I'll just thank Mr. Potts for this project. I will say that I hope he's inspired by Commissioner Ambiel's comments about bike parking and bike rooms. I certainly was this late hour of this evening. And also to let Mr. Potts know, because I know he brings various projects before us, that the VTA is in the process of updating their bike parking guidelines. So expect those in the future. And I know there will be expected more space is required to be provided along with a host of other things. So the more that you can do to add spaces to sort of be forward looking to that would be great. I think it's a bit of a broken record here, and our chair said it really well already of what work we need to do with staff. I think as a commission, we've been, I feel like, asking the same questions for 3 years. And we really need to do something on First Street with the cumulative impact of parking, traffic, the streetscape plan. We're talking about curb management, and I think we need to start doing, our chair has hinted at it, but long-term goals and more short-term immediate things that we can take on. And I think the Complete Streets Commission feels, I think we've been a little bit held up because we've always been given the sense that the First Street streetscape was in the planning department, and I'm now hearing the planning department look at streets. They're the transportation team. So if it's in the transportation team, I think we're working on our work plan, and we need to prioritize that because this is, we're behind the ball on it. I think I'll stop now because I'm being a broken record. I thought Mr. Wing, even though, you know, his proposal of how to address it is not yet vetted, I felt that the issues he's raising are very warranted. And as part of our First Street look, we shouldn't ignore the issues that he's raised and look for ways that we can solve them appropriately. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stacy. I also want to thank the applicant for following the recommended number of spaces, parking spaces set by the city, and not reduce that further bonus. As a commission, we're often limited by what we can say and can do with the new laws by the state. And then, so I really appreciate the fact that the applicant can revert back to what the city was recommending, and exceeding that, of course, on the biking side. I also hope that the Planning Commission has found the input from the Complete Streets Commission beneficial. I don't know, this is a new path for us, I guess, as we come together into one meeting, and you get to listen to our rambling, and whether it makes sense or not, hopefully at least it's beneficial insight to you. So with that, I think I am going to ask for a motion to approve or recommend. Wow, okay. I guess that, like, we don't want to do that, or?
Do it if you want.
All right, go for it, Stacy.
Yep. I move to approve this project and recommend it to the Planning Commission and then on to the City Council.
Okay, very well.
I'll second that.
Okay. Before we second, any amendments before, Tom, any amendments from anyone else?
No.
I'll take it as a no. All right, we have a second. So let's just do a quick roll call here.
I have a quick short amendment that the applicant pull power into the bike parking.
Accepted amendment.
Okay, so can you please restate the motion, Stacy?
Sure. I move to approve this project, recommend it to the Planning Commission and the City Council, accepting Commissioner Ambiel's amendment to have power run to the Class 1 bike storage.
Thank you. All right. Do we have a second for the amended motion?
Sure, we can just second that also.
Very well. Let's do a quick roll call here. Commissioner Biel,
Aye.
Commissioner Banerjee,
Aye.
Commissioner Cutts,
Aye.
Commissioner Schneidner,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So congratulations and thank you again. 5-0 that the motion passes. And I have a question now to, I guess, the Planning Commission and the Tito. Do you still need the commission, the Complete Streets Commission online for the rest of the meeting? Or can we adjourn that portion of the meeting?
I would punt to Eric, our attorney, because, if the commission has some transportation related questions, it'd probably be best for you guys to stick around because we're limited under SB 330. So I would have to punt to Eric on that. So
I would say that the commission, since they've made a recommendation and voted on it, that they could be released.
Okay.
I would legally, I mean, I don't know logistically if there's any reason to stay, but legally you're done.
Okay, that's cool. I just didn't know if the commission. Okay, that's fine.
Very well. Well, thank you all for your time and for
Thank you. I definitely appreciated sharing this time with your commission. It was really informative, and I think I will also be checking out an e-bike. I feel like I'm behind but I think that your concern about First Street traffic and bike paths is really on point and real, because it is the most developed street it is a street that is seeing the most development. And as someone who bikes downtown with my family, that's the path that we take. So I think that your focus on that is going to be really important. So thank you for that.
Great. Well, thank you all. And therefore, we are adjourning the Complete Streets Commission portion of today's meeting. Good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's open up our deliberation. Planning Commission, anyone want to go first?
I can go. So I'll be quick. I think our biggest complaint last time was that the building just kind of felt massive, and unfortunately it still feels kind of massive, but I understand that this is a big building, so there's only so much you can do. But I think there's a couple strategies that you could look at. I think that you're using the heavy stone textured panels, but with that, you're also creating a layer and pushing the building out to put those panels on top. So where you have the wood texture on the entrance area, actually what's being shown right now, above that on the third floor, you have the panels. And so it's just, I'm wondering, basically, is it necessary to have those panels on level 3, or could you shift it back? What are the things that are weighing down this building, and how do you reduce the weight? So even if you're able to push level 3 back slightly, level 4 back slightly, just to kind of make it not as massive. There's something you did on the Whitney elevation where you have 2 balconies side by side going all the way up. And that essentially creates more articulation. And so I'm not sure if maybe there's a way you can do that on the First Street elevation. Are there ways to kind of move the balconies in certain locations to reduce the weight? Because, there is aspects of it that look very flat. There's other things like the glass railings. We've told a lot of applicants not to put glass railings and to put more residential railings. So I'm not sure if maybe that's something you could look at. And the entry area is really great with the awnings and the lighting. I'm wondering if that could be implemented in other parts of the building as well. And then the open space in the middle, it's a little concerning, if I'm being honest, because we've never seen something like that, an element like that before. So I would just recommend, to kind of be prepared when you go to the council, maybe have a perspective of looking up to see what it really feels like in that space. Just to kind of really show the details, because I know council is probably going to ask you about those things. But you know, I think with the right modifications, especially since I know you've done a lot of projects in Los Altos already, I think that you could definitely have this ready for council. So I would recommend approval, and that's it.
Okay, anyone who would like to go next?
Okay. What a difference. The first project that we looked at, I think, is has been said, was just massive, and I saw no redeeming quality to it all. And you've really have done, in my estimation, a marvelous turnaround. It's a very attractive looking. It is big. I find it attractive. I thinking about some of the apartments over on 3rd Street that are large and with no articulation at all. And then comparing this and looking at the balcony breakups and everything you've done, I'm very, very pleased with it. I would like to see something done with chargers for the electric vehicles, EV chargers in the garage. I did not see any indication that you had any at all. Again, I would second the street commission where they said power for the bicycle lockers would be good, because you got 50 units and people are going to be bringing their bikes up the stairs to charge in the room and in their apartment. It's really not practical. So if you could have some down there, I think it would be good. I don't have anything else. Certainly things could be done to make it break it up, make maybe make it not quite as heavy. But I'm not going to second guess what you have. I'm happy with what you've done. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go next. You know, I think it is a vast improvement from what we saw earlier. To me, it is still a big, massive building, although I appreciate what you have done. I would like to see more done to reduce the bulk and the mass, but also understand that the economics and the way the law works, we just can't make that happen, which is unfortunate. I would also echo the comments that have been made. If there are some things you can do, I would certainly say what we heard from the Streets Commission was very informative for me as well to hear, you know, some of the concerns they have, which were things that I hadn't really been focusing on, and would really urge you to do something, particularly on the e-bike charging. You know, hopefully this will be a building that will attract families with the 3-bedroom units. And I think the comments also about children being able to take their bikes in and out easily is a really important one. So I would encourage you to follow that as well. But having said that, I'd recommend let's move it forward.
Okay, I guess I'm up. Jeff, I think you did a good job. I think this is a much more coherent building than it was initially. It is a big building and there's nothing anybody can do about that. It's kind of interesting this evening. We had one very, very small building that was challenging because it was so small. And now we have a large building that's challenging because it's big. I liked what you did with the trees. I keep talking about the landscape, and I think that's going to if it ends up the way you have laid it out in the plans, it's going to end up answering some of the concerns that people may have because of the mass of the building. If you're standing on the sidewalk and you've got these canopies of trees around, you're not going to be as bothered by the size of the building. And at a distance, it's more, as you showed, the buildings that surround it or will surround it are going to be very, very similar in height. And that's the way it is on First Street now. So congratulations. I think you did a good job. I like the changes you made. You'll want to take the other comments and see what you can do to tweak the building a little bit. But I think this is a good job, and I will support moving it towards the council.
Okay, has everyone gone? Okay. So I'm probably more aligned with Commissioner Ahi in his feedback. I still think that this reads is really massive, and I understand entirely that the biggest, well, I think that the single biggest factor to that is the location and placement of the fourth floor. And I understand that there's no incentive, and quite the opposite, a disincentive to push that back. So that's not going to happen. And that's why our now new design guidelines are require that step back at the top. I think that will be an improvement going forward, but they're not beholden to that. So the sort of, I was also trying to think like ways to, to me, it still reads pretty, not very residential, a little too commercial. I'd like to see even, I think they've done a good job with changing the materials, and I like the change in the corner. I think there's more that could be done. One of the changes that I did really like also is the improvement in landscaping and the pedestrian experience. I think they did a really good job in both adding landscaping, creating more around the corner. I think that will improve privacy as they intended. So that buffing up, I thought was solid. I don't like the change to the balconies. It looks like it went from being kind of this wood material to being glass. And I think that actually particularly now the wood is a darker tone, when you look at the top image, it actually, I think if you imagine that those balconies would be, if they went back to being a different, or the solid material, it will help break that up a lot more, as opposed to the glass, which just makes it all look like one, long piece. And also it really is going to affect privacy. So people on the street could see right up into someone's balcony, into their unit. So I would urge, because this is a residential project, to I think that would improve and change the materials and add to that, because the left side seems to accomplish a lot more variety, and then the right side is kind of like all the same. And the other area that I think, so balconies I'd like to see go back to being a material, solid material. I think the corner on the right also could benefit from being broken up similarly to the one on the left. Like, I don't think that band should go all across, because then it would just kind of create this horizontal mass. But I think that the 3 levels going up of the same material creates this kind of intense horizontal tower-like feeling. And I would try to do the same thing with what you did in the other corner. I think that would just make it feel softer. And then with the windows, like I still think, I can't really see a different, from the workshop to the current, it references that like window patterns were revised to be a little bit more residential. I think there's still more that could be experimented. I don't want to like design from the dais, but I do think that maybe there's more that can be done. So it's those 3 areas. But those are my recommendations. Okay. Any commissioners have thoughts? I mean, if with the last one, John, we made suggestion that we make specific recommendations. So I'll take a poll if anyone's on board with some of the specific recommendations that I made or that Commissioner Ahi made.
I think you make some good points with the balconies and the glass. And that may well, looking at the workshop picture and the current, I think you're right in that, and I think that would help maybe break it up a little bit. I don't know about trying to alter too much of anything else. Like you said, it's a large site. It's a large building. We're getting a lot of new housing, some low income, some moderate, lots of pluses. So I could go with changing the balconies.
And what are your thoughts on the corner?
You know, I'm trying to visualize that. It's not a bad idea. So how far would you go from the?
I would just do that. I mean, I wouldn't, well, I think they should play around with it, but I just think that three tower or three-story component just feels like it's intense.
Yeah, well, why don't we have them, well, my thought is that, yeah, as a proposal, have them make that similar, and let's see what it looks like. And do we want them to bring it back to us, or do we want to have it go to staff before council gets it?
I think staff could probably work with them on it. I don't know. John, what do you think? Or Guido?
Yeah, I just, because, you know, we put the motion in the staff report and, you know, we referenced the minutes. So we just want to have very clear direction in the motion. So if it's either coming back to staff, or if you want us to bring it back to another meeting, or if you want to recommend it to council, but we just want very clear direction so we can.
I think with the limited number of meetings, I definitely wouldn't want it to come back to another meeting to us at least.
So I think you could probably do a motion similar to the one you did for the last project, is have the applicant work with staff to address some of the comments mentioned by the planning commissioners before this actually goes on to the city council for their consideration. You're still recommending approval.
Okay, well, let me pull the other three because I only heard from one.
No,
So-
I'll jump in here. No, I would agree with the approach that you've outlined and that John has said is workable. I agree completely with the idea. I think they're almost a victim because they were so successful working on the left side of the building with the entryway that now we want it on the right side, because that is a massive, just sort of bulk and mass that just jumps out at you. So I would encourage them to work with staff to come up with something, anything you can do, because the comments we've had about bulk and mass, you are also going to get from the city council. So I think it will just make your application much stronger if you can come up with a few more things that just help reduce what this looks like. It makes it look more residential. Because as you pointed out, Renee, it's, you know, with the new objective standards, this is not a building that would probably pass muster. So,
right.
So I think it would enhance your application to spend a little more time on it working with staff.
Okay, Eric?
I don't disagree with any of the things that have been said. I'm a little less bothered by that corner than you are, but I see what you're saying. And I certainly would support making that a recommendation for going forward. So I'm perfectly happy with a motion that would include that corner. It would include looking at the balconies and the windows, as you said. That's fine with me. Both what you and Maris recommended, I think they're complementary, you know, or at least they're not contradictory. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with Chair Bodner's suggestions on this. I think that just looking at the materials, about, you know, using them in different places, balconies, railings, I think that if you see it as on the spectrum of one side is downtown residential and the other side is El Camino residential, I think it's still a little bit on the El Camino residential. So, but I think that there's little things that can be done that will kind of bring it more towards downtown. But again, I'm pretty confident that the architect can do this.
Okay. All right, so we need to, this is a two-parter, right? We need to recommend adoption of,
I'll pull it up on the screen.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of SQL work here, but this one actually has a mitigated neg deck. So we do need to, let me pull up my recommendation slide. So for the Planning Commission, yeah, that's the.
Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion? To do 1, 2, and 3 as written?
Well, how many motions are we making?
We're making 2, correct?
Can we do it all in one, or do we have to do them each as individual?
You could do it all in one. Actually, I'd like to suggest, if you're in accord with it, that you might just say we move the staff recommendation, but we also recommend that the architect work with staff to accomplish, and then kind of try to be specific about what you'd like them to accomplish.
Okay.
I move that Ronit make the motion.
Okay. So what we're talking about is really three: directing the applicant to further work with city staff to reduce the bulk and mass of the building, and specifically to consider using different material for the balconies. To consider repeating architectural elements that are utilized on one corner on the opposite corner, and to consider even further adjustments to window patterns to make it feel more residential. Is there anything else?
No.
Also, if there's things in terms of massing that can be done without significantly altering the building.
Right.
So just massing strategies.
Okay. So do we have a second? Can I make a motion, or does someone else need to make that? I mean, I articulated it, but.
For a small body, it's okay if the chair makes the
Okay,
motion.
all right. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Let's go around.
Aye.
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 Aye. Great.
It's motion
Okay.
passes 5-0.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, good luck. Okay, any commissioner reports or comments? No. Maybe we'll report out next time. Great. Future agenda items?
I've got a few things to share with the commission. Tuesday, December 14th, 2021, you have a housing element study session that's with the City Council. This will be a study session led by our consultants, and it'll provide a lot of background information about what a housing element is, the timelines for accomplishing or completing the housing element, and other information that will go into the completion of the housing element. Then on Thursday, December 16th, 2021, this is your next meeting and the last one of the year. You're going to be looking at a density bonus ordinance text amendment that's going to be brought forward by your city attorney's office. And we're going to have some training for you on SB 8, SB 9, SB 10, and AB 215, the latest pack of laws that the state legislature related to housing has adopted and been signed by the governor. Governor will be going into effect on the 1st of January. And then on Tuesday, January 11th of 2022, you're going to join the City Council in a study session that will be taking a look at the 100% affordable housing project at 330 Distal Circle. The architects and the developers have come up with a design based on all the feedback at the numerous public workshops we've had over this past year. So you'll get a firsthand look at that and be able to interact with the architect on the concept for the design and the project that they're hoping to submit a formal application on. And that kind of wraps it up for the future. I do want to take a quick moment to see if you could all join me in wishing Guido Persicone good luck in his future career. This is his last meeting with the Planning Commission, and I just want to wish him well in the future and know that he will do a good job on his next career stop.
Thank
Guido?
you. Thank you.
Good luck, Guido.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
It's been a pleasure.
Good luck.
Good luck. It's been great working with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
John, do we have a time for when the joint city council meeting is on the 14th?
I don't have a specific time yet, but I will get that finalized and get it out to the commissioners.
I have one other comment. I should probably said it a minute ago. I think it was the meeting with the Streets Commission was very beneficial. they brought a lot of ideas to the plate, some of which all of us have thought about at various times. And I think it was very good. I guess probably going to have more of them, so.
We will, for sure.
I just want to make it clear, I am not getting an e-bike. Absolutely not. You're talking me out of it.
My truck mountain bike is still working, and it's the E is me.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good meeting. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Good
Good night. Take care.
Thank you.